My name is Nancy. Thanks for reading. I don't know much about the world outside. I learned about it from watching TV as a child. It showed me animals that lived in the wild, scenery I had never seen before, and the daily lives of people who spoke different languages. I was brave enough to study abroad while I was in college because I wanted to get a closer look at this strange world. That's where I found the unknown world I was looking for. People's lives were going well, even though they spoke a different language. There were many animals and beautiful scenery to see. I want other people to feel this wonder too, so I thought I had a job at a tour agency. I was in charge of planning tours for the group I worked for. I was able to handle everything from site checks to negotiations thanks to what I learned while studying abroad. Even though my life was very busy, I didn't forget about my personal life. Daniel and I got married a few years ago. We met at work. Work and family life were going well for me until something came up. It was with Barbara, my wife's mom. Barbara is a housewife who thinks that after getting married, women should stay at home. I don't disagree with her point of view, but I believe that thought is out of date. Even though I told her that, she said, "Isn't it a woman's job to take care of Daniel? In what way does that bother you?" "What though? What are you saying as Daniel's wife?" No. In the end, Barbara didn't get that I didn't want her to tell me what to think. I couldn't keep living with Barbara like this, so I told Daniel he should buy a house. The way people see us might change after we buy a house. Daniel decided to buy a house right away after hearing that. That's how I didn't have to live with Barbara. But the story didn't end there. Barbara began to come over more often after we bought the house. She would come over every weekend and make noise with Daniel. She didn't care for her husband, Anthony, of course. "Barbara, can I leave Anthony alone? He's not a kid. He can handle it. Wasn't it a woman's job to take care of her husband?" I wanted to answer, but I thought it would start a fight, so I didn't. Then Barbara, who had been making a lot of noise with Daniel, started talking to someone else. I forgot to say that next week I'm going on a trip. Be careful, please. "What do you mean, Nancy? You're also coming." But it's so sudden." "Are you not going to go on the trip with the family as Daniel's wife?" "But there's also work to do. We're going on vacation with our family. Aren't our in-laws family to you?" "That's not what I mean." "Then make it happen." Yes. Even though I couldn't answer, that was still the best part. When Barbara saw that I was upset, she said in a mean voice, "And booked the hotel." I should always brag about working at a travel agency, right? I'm not bragging. So you can do it, right? Where do we want to go? England? London? Where is London? I went to school abroad. I still know a lot of people there. It might be difficult for other countries or regions, but maybe I can manage London. All right, I'll try. I already have my plane tickets, so all you have to do is book the room. You booked the flight, but not the hotel. I bought the tickets. I got them. I bought first-class tickets with my card points. Barbara made a face. From her happiness, it looked like it was true. Then I saw stacks of brand-name items on the couch. I see. Yes, I get it. When Daniel heard first class, he leaned in. Being first class. Are you sure, Mom? Yes, it's a first-class trip to another country. Very cool. We're leaving at 9:30 p.m., so you have time to work until the very end. Barbara's smile was still there. It seemed strange, but there's no reason to lie about going on vacation. But it's so sudden. I need to book the hotel properly or she'll be mad. It might not be easy to find a room. After giving it some thought, I chose to get a hotel recommendation from people I knew when I studied abroad. Can you do it at Nancy's request? I asked over the phone. Sure. There are 2 rooms for 4 people. Thank you. With that, I was able to book the room. Then I forgot to take the day off for the trip because I had to go so quickly. That's why I worked. Barb told me to meet her at the airport at 6 p.m., so I should be able to make it if I finish work soon. That's what I thought when Barbara called all of a sudden. Hello, Barbara. Nancy, are you done with work? I'm just leaving the office now, so I'll be at the airport after 6 p.m. Oh, that's too bad, huh? Well, we're actually leaving at 6 p.m. Oh, no way. I ran back to my desk quickly. I used my computer to look up the trip times. Come on, London. That flight I heard about at 9:30 p.m., I found it, but there was also one that left after 6 p.m. Could it be this flight after 6 p.m.? Yes. So the family is going without you. What about Anthony if you leave me behind? You should really be sick. I was very angry. How could she have planned so well to leave me out? Not forgivable. Barbara would benefit from seeing how angry I am, though. Even though it meant putting on a brave face, I had to hide how I felt. Barb, I clenched my teeth and told her. I booked the hotel, so Daniel knows the name of the hotel. Now there's nothing you can do. Barb laughed on the other end of the line. I was angry, so I told them, go without me. I like that better. Our family doesn't need a wife like you. Not useful. How do you mean? Do you not know? Because of work, you don't do your chores. Daniel is not happy. I do have a lot of work to do, but I've never skipped doing my housework. Why would Daniel be upset? Can I speak to Daniel? Sure. Nancy wants to talk. Daniel's voice came after Barbara's mocking one. Hi there. What's up, Nancy? Daniel, what do you mean you're upset with me? Just that you're always at work and neglecting me. Do you mean neglect? I clean, cook, and do laundry. You think you're taking care of everything yourself, right? Not true. Don't you think you should treat me better? Listen to me and do things for me. I know that a wife who helps her husband is appreciated. The husband likes it, but that's not the only thing that makes a marriage work. I never say bad things about Daniel in public. I only praise him, not when there are only two of us. But we need to say what we think when we're by ourselves. If I didn't, our relationship would end, and Daniel would have me as his helper. Still, he kept whining about me. So you think you can act all high and mighty because you earn more? Not at all. In any case, that bothers me. You're leaving me behind for that. Sure, think of it as stress release. Don't worry. I'll bring you a small gift. That's not the point. It was clear that Daniel didn't care about me. I have my own plans, if that's how things are. Okay, have fun on the trip. That's fine. Bye. Daniel was happy when he hung up. I was furious. Because Daniel and Barbara were so selfish, I couldn't stand them. Enjoy your trip without me, but be ready for anything. I won't forgive you, even if you cry and say sorry when you come back. I quickly left the office with my cell phone. Hi there, my name is Nancy. Are you available? I need to talk about which hotel I booked. I had a lot of time now that the trip was over. I'll take care of everything now. I ran around with that drive. After that, I got home that night, tired. The phone rang right then. Hello, Nancy. What were you thinking? Barb was on the other end of the line, and she sounded very angry. I was lying when I knew the reason. Barbara, how is the trip going for you? That's not what we need right now. The hotel won't let us check in. Did you have a reservation? You made the reservation, didn't you? I canceled it because I wasn't going. Huh? Then what? Where are we going to stay tonight? I don't know, Nancy. The angry voice of Barbara could be heard, but she is in London. It's not scary at all that she's mad on the phone. That's tough, not having a room while you're away. You could have anything happen. Huh? You should know that it's not the best place. Wait. Help me. Barbara sounded scared, and then there was a faint noise in the background. There's an empty room. Anthony is trying to make it possible for us to stay there. Daniel's voice was there. Is that true, Daniel? It looks like it'll be fine, you see. Nancy knew about that. The tone of Barbara's voice changed from sad to happy, as if her tears earlier were not real. I heard you, Nancy. I feel bad for you. It didn't go as planned. Because I canceled, the room was free. All of this was part of my plan, though. I had another goal in mind. I was glad there was a spot open. I thought you'd be proud that they canceled our hotel reservation. Didn't you? No, not really. Don't you feel frustrated? If you're mad, you can say so. I just changed my mind and won't be going. Trying to look strong. What a shame. This is typical of Daniel's useless wife. Barbara let out a loud laugh. Then she kept talking about how beautiful the place was and how good the food was, among other things. I finally got tired of listening and quietly hung up the phone. It's likely she didn't even notice. That thought made me smile a little. Anyway, we only have a few more days to go. I got ready and ate dinner. After a few days, Barbara called me again as I was on my way back from somewhere to the station. Hey, Nancy. How are you? What the heck is going on? Not once more. What is wrong with this hotel? What are you talking about? Barbara's story. In short, Anthony was able to get them to stay in the room I had to cancel because of his negotiation skills. The talks that Anthony was having went smoothly. The girls would stay in a room that was left open. The plan was for them to stay for 4 days and check out today, but the hotel charged them £8,000 for their stay. Then what's the matter? It costs £2,000 a night, right? Huh, you'd pay about $2,500 a night for that. It's silly. Does that mean it's for 2 rooms? That's about $1,200 per room. Yes, you did tell Daniel it was $300 per room per night. That means it should be $600 for 2 rooms. Why does it cost 4 times as much? Wow. I was shocked. They stayed there without even seeing how much the rooms cost. Well, I knew this was going to happen, so I set it up that way. Anyway, Barbara's noise on the phone must be annoying other people. I need to make her feel better. Hey, Nancy, can you hear me? Nancy, Barbara, can you be a bit quieter? What made you lie? She's good at blaming others without taking a look at herself. I started to explain to Barbara when I got angry. The $300 rate was because I booked the room. Huh. I asked a friend who runs a hotel because it was very last minute. Someone you know. Yes, a room at their hotel costs about $600 for 2 people. Why then $11,200? That price gets you a really nice room. A friend helped me out. Help me out. Since there were no other rooms available, they set up a nicer one. So, is this the regular price? Barbara is sounding tense. When Barbara told me there wasn't enough time for the trip, I told my friend that any room would do. The only available room was a pricey suite. My friend was kind and gave me a low price. I didn't ask Barbara to leave me behind. I told my friend right away what was going on and got the room canceled. While I couldn't leave Barbara and the others without a place to stay, I did offer to do so at the normal rate if they came. Since Daniel had told Barbara about the hotel, I knew she wouldn't check the price, and I was right. You knew you were supposed to say that. It won't help to yell. Make sure you pay. Nancy, we're not going to pay. You do. But if you don't pay, you'll be arrested. Pinned up. Of course, problems overseas can be a mess. Do you agree with that? Barbara didn't seem to know what to say. Barbara yelled, "Don't mess with me," just as I was hanging up the phone because I thought I had won. This will make you feel bad when I get back. That's fine, but we're strangers now, right? Huh? Why? Well, you said it was a trip with your family. Since I'm not there, I'm not family, right? That's different. Anthony's voice came over the phone before she could finish. Why are you shouting so loudly? Do not talk. It is embarrassing. Anthony, I took advantage of the chance and called out to him. He saw it and replied, "Nancy, are you all right? How is your cold? I never had a cold in the first place." "What? Give it to me." Anthony took Barbara's phone. It looked like. His voice got stronger. "Nancy, can you explain everything?" "I can, actually." From the start, I told him everything. His voice got softer over time. "I see. That's why you didn't show up. I am sorry. I wanted to go." "Don't worry, Nancy. You're not to blame. Daniel and Barbara are there." A whimper could be heard from far away. Anthony's anger seemed to scare Barbara and Daniel. When I thought about this, an idea came to me. Should I explain to Anthony what Barbara has been up to? I believed that. This is why I turned to Anthony. "Anthony, can I tell you something?" "What is it?" "Barbara comes to our house almost every weekend." "I know that. And when she throws away receipts at our place, there are piles of them." "What receipts for brand goods?" "It's fine to buy a lot, but please dispose of the receipts at your place." Barbara wasn't just making a lot of noise at our house. She was also buying brand name items and throwing away the papers to hide them for Anthony. She thought this way she wouldn't get caught. Of course, I'm a witness, so it's pointless. Anthony didn't seem to know, though. "That's interesting to know. Also, tell her to stop talking badly about you at our house." "She talks about me too." "Yes, she does say you don't make much money." "Daniel also says that he is a bad dad." I think. Anything else? Well, I finally let out all of my anger on Anthony. Even though some of it wasn't directly about Anthony, he listened quietly and then said sorry to me at the end. "Sorry about that. I get it now." "Understand what?" "Why Barbara didn't want to use her card to pay for the hotel. Maybe, probably because the cost was much higher than she expected, close to her credit limit." "Sorry about that." That voice was Barbara. "It's not okay that you waste so much money." "Barbara, I want to get a divorce." "Please, don't do that." After Anthony's yelling, Barbara's sad voice came next. He yelled at Daniel too. "Daniel, why don't you defend your wife?" "That's, Please stop coming to my house. Just think about this." "Yes, sir." Daniel seemed incredibly obedient. He probably didn't think it was a big deal that his parents kicked him out of the house. That's when I dealt the last blow. "So, Daniel, it looks like you're going to live alone now, huh?" "What do you mean?" At that moment, Daniel's voice grew louder. He must have taken the phone. I moved my phone out of the way and told him what was going on. "Daniel, I want a divorce. A split up." "Are you kidding me?" "No, I mean it. The house is already gone. You bought it? Why do you not tell me about that?" "That's our home." "No, that's my house. But I also had to pay the bills." "You weren't," I said. "How do you mean?" "Every month, I gave you some of my pay. That was for living costs. I paid the payment myself because a few hundred wasn't enough. With my name on the house, there was no reason to be upset. I decided to get a divorce from Daniel because of this event. I sold the house that made me remember bad times when I lived with him. That means you'll be living by yourself." "Wait, give it some thought." "No, it is set. When I find a place, I'll get in touch with you. After that, I'll send you the written notice." "Notice from the government." "Of course, I'll be asking for money in a split." "Await my arrival." I didn't care that Daniel was crying on the other end. The call ended. After that, Daniel and I got a divorce after talking about it. Anthony actually split up with Barbara too. Barbara didn't get any money in the split because she wasted money, so she was left on her own. I was just kicked out of the room. Daniel was almost broke because he had spent all of his money on useless things, except for the few $100s he gave me every month. He now lives in a rundown flat and takes the bus to work. But Daniel might be doing better than Barbara. With no money or a place to live, Barbara had to get a live-in job. Daniel's place was too small for her. From morning to night, she works hard. It's going well for me. Since I'm single, I have more time on my hands and can handle calls from abroad. A lot of people at work depend on me now, and there have even been rumors of a raise to department head. I'm busy planning new tour packages while I fly around the world today.
My name is Anna Mitchell, and I'm 38 years young. For the past 9 years, I've poured my heart into my skincare clinic, which has grown into a sanctuary of beauty and tranquility in the bustling heart of the city. My life, seemingly serene, was about to face an unexpected storm. It was a regular Thursday evening when Ethan, my husband of 4 years, casually dropped a bombshell over dinner. "I think it's time for Mom to move in with us," he said, as if discussing the weather. I paused, a forkful of salad suspended in midair. "Move in, as in permanently?" The words felt heavy in my mouth. Ethan nodded, oblivious to my shock. "Yeah, since Dad's gone, she's all alone. It's the least we can do." The news should have been a discussion, a decision made together. But there it was, presented as a done deal. My mind raced with images of Mrs. Harper, Ethan's mother, a woman of strong opinions and an even stronger presence, invading our peaceful home. But Ethan, our apartment isn't exactly spacious. Where would she even stay? I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside I was a whirlwind of anxiety and frustration. "We'll figure it out. It's important to me, Anna." His tone left no room for argument. I wanted to protest, to explain that this wasn't just about physical space, but about our space, our sanctuary. But I saw the resolve in Ethan's eyes, and something inside me deflated. "Okay," I sighed. "If it's just for a while, we can make it work." Ethan smiled, relieved, but I couldn't mirror his sentiment. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a sense of foreboding creeping over me. The following week, Mrs. Harper arrived, not with a suitcase, but with a moving company. Boxes upon boxes cluttered our once serene living room, and my heart sank. This was not temporary. It was a complete upheaval. "What's all this, Mrs. Harper?" I asked, trying to mask my dismay with a polite smile. "Oh, darling, I sold the house. This place is much nicer, and I thought, why not?" she chirped, her voice too cheerful for the gravity of the situation. I turned to Ethan, searching for an explanation, but he just shrugged. "Mom needs to be comfortable," he said. That night, as I squeezed past the boxes to reach my own bed, I realized the invasion had just begun. My home, my sanctuary, was slipping away, and with it, a part of my soul screamed in protest. But little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg. The real storm was yet to come. The arrival of Mrs. Harper marked the beginning of a new, uninvited chapter in our lives. Her presence, once sporadic, became a permanent fixture, transforming our home into a space I hardly recognized. One evening, about a week after her arrival, I found Ethan and his mother in the midst of a lively conversation in the living room, now cluttered with Mrs. Harper's belongings. "Anna, come join us," Ethan beckoned, his tone unusually cheerful. As I approached, Mrs. Harper's eyes scanned me with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. "Anna, dear, I was just telling Ethan how cozy this place is. Much better than living alone in that big old house." "Ethan, we talked about this being temporary," I whispered, trying to keep my composure. He brushed off my concern with a wave of his hand. "Mom's happy here. Isn't that what matters?" The conversation turned to mundane matters, but I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This was not the agreement. This was not the life I had envisioned. In the following days, the situation worsened. Mrs. Harper, with her lavish tastes and disregard for boundaries, treated our home like her personal playground. The once orderly living room was now a maze of her possessions, and the tranquil ambiance I cherished was replaced by a constant buzz of her activities. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said one evening, finding him alone in the kitchen. "Your mother, she's taking over our home. We need to set some boundaries." He looked at me, his expression a mix of annoyance and indifference. "Anna, she's just trying to make herself at home. You're overreacting." "Overreacting? Overreacting? Ethan, look around. This isn't a home anymore. It's a storage unit for your mother's things." He shrugged, unmoved. "If you're so unhappy, maybe you should consider leaving." His words hit me like a physical blow. Leave? My own home? But as I looked around at the alien environment that my home had become, I realized he was right. This was no longer my sanctuary. It was time for me to reclaim my space, my peace. That night, with a heavy heart, I packed a suitcase with my essentials. I glanced around the apartment one last time, a silent farewell to a chapter of my life that was closing. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was leaving behind a part of my life, but I was also stepping into a new beginning, one where I would not be overshadowed by the whims of others. I found refuge in a modest hotel room that night, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. Alone with my thoughts, I reflected on the path that led me here. My journey from a passionate beautician to a successful clinic owner was a testament to my resilience and ambition. But my personal life, it seemed, had taken a detour I hadn't anticipated. Ethan and I had met in a serendipitous encounter at a local cafe. He was charming, with a carefree spirit that complemented my meticulous nature. Our relationship blossomed into marriage, a union I believed was built on mutual respect and understanding. Yet, here I was, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The following days were a blur of emotions and decisions. I temporarily relocated my clinic to a smaller, more affordable space and dove into work. It was my sanctuary, a place where I felt in control, empowered. But the image of our cluttered apartment, now overrun by Mrs. Harper's possessions, lingered in my mind. Ethan's words echoed in my ears, "Maybe you should consider leaving." It wasn't just about the physical space. It was about respect, about being heard. I realized Ethan's perception of our life together had been a facade, masking his apathy and entitlement. Determined to confront the situation, I arranged to meet Ethan at a neutral location, a quaint coffee shop where we had shared many moments in the past. "Ethan, we need to talk about everything." "About us," I began, my voice steady but laced with emotion. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Anna, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to understand that what happened wasn't just about your mother moving in. It's about us, about how you disregarded my feelings, and my presence in our home." Ethan sighed, a look of realization dawning on his face. "I didn't see it that way. I just thought..." "That's just it, Ethan. You didn't think about us, about me. You made a decision that affected both our lives without even considering how I would feel." The conversation was difficult, filled with moments of silence and unspoken truths, but it was necessary. By the end, it was clear that our paths had diverged. The love that once bound us had frayed under the weight of unmet expectations and unspoken grievances. As I walked away from the coffee shop, a sense of closure washed over me. It was time to turn the page, to start a new chapter in my life, one where I was the author of my own story. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in my work, finding solace in the familiar routines of my clinic. Each facial treatment I performed was not just a service to my clients, but a therapeutic ritual for my own healing. Yet, in the quiet moments, my thoughts drifted back to Ethan and the life we had shared. It was during one of these reflective moments that my phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, a jolt to my newfound tranquility. I hesitated but answered. "Anna, we need to talk." Ethan's voice was tense, a stark contrast to his usual nonchalance. I agreed to meet him at our apartment, a place I hadn't returned to since the night I left. Stepping back into the apartment was like entering a time capsule, each room a reminder of the dreams and plans we had woven together. Ethan was waiting, his posture rigid, a nervous energy about him. "Anna, I've been thinking a lot since our last talk. I realize I've been inconsiderate." "Inconsiderate is an understatement, Ethan." My response was calm but firm. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "I know, and I'm sorry, truly, but I want to make things right. Can we start over?" The offer hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our past. Part of me yearned for the comfort of what was familiar, of the love we once shared, but another part, stronger and more resolute, knew that some paths, once diverged, cannot be rejoined. "Ethan, I appreciate your apology, and I believe you're sincere, but too much has changed. I've changed. We can't just erase what happened and start over." He looked crestfallen, the reality of my words sinking in. "I guess I was hoping. But you're right. I just wish things could have been different." As I left the apartment for the last time, I felt a chapter closing behind me. It was a chapter filled with love, learning, and ultimately letting go. The pain of the past was still there, but it was now a part of the tapestry of my life, a tapestry I was weaving with new threads of strength and independence. As the days turned into weeks, my new reality began to take shape. I poured my energy into revitalizing my clinic, introducing new services and workshops that resonated with my own journey of self-care and empowerment. My clients, new and old, embraced these changes, and I found joy in their transformations, both skin deep and beyond. The clinic became more than just a business. It was a testament to my resilience, a place where I could channel my experiences into something beautiful and healing. My confidence grew, not just as a businesswoman, but as an individual forging her path. It was during this period of growth that Ethan re-entered my life, albeit in a way I hadn't anticipated. One evening, as I was closing the clinic, my phone buzzed with a message from him. Hesitant, I opened it to find a plea for help. "Anna, I'm in trouble. Can we talk?" The message was vague, but something in the tone suggested a seriousness I couldn't ignore. We agreed to meet at a local park the following day, a neutral ground amid the autumn leaves. Sitting on a park bench, Ethan looked different. The carefree demeanor was gone, replaced by a weariness that seemed to weigh on him. "Anna, I messed up," he began, his voice strained. "After you left, things with my mom got out of hand. I didn't realize how much we were spending, how much debt we were accumulating. I'm drowning." His words were a confession, an admission of the chaos he had found himself in. As he spoke, I felt a mix of emotions, surprise, sympathy, but above all, a reaffirmation of the decision I had made to leave. "Ethan, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help you. You need to take responsibility for your actions and find a way to deal with this." He nodded, a resigned acceptance in his eyes. "I know, I guess I was hoping for a miracle." Our conversation was brief, but it was clear that Ethan's journey was taking a different path, one filled with its own challenges and lessons. As I walked away, I realized that while our lives had diverged, I hoped he would find his way, just as I had found mine. Life has a way of coming full circle, and in the months that followed, this adage proved true. My clinic flourished, becoming a beacon for those seeking not just beauty treatments, but also a sense of community and empowerment. I had found my stride, balancing the demands of my business with the fulfillment of personal growth. Then came an unexpected turn. One busy afternoon, as I was consulting with a client, my phone rang persistently. Excusing myself, I stepped out to answer, finding Lisa, my cousin and the owner of the apartment I once shared with Ethan, on the other line. "Anna, there's trouble." Lisa's voice was tense. "Ethan and his mother are facing eviction. They haven't paid rent in months, and now they're asking for my help." The news was a shock, but not entirely surprising. Ethan's financial recklessness had been a growing concern, one that I had distanced myself from. Lisa's request was clear. She needed my help to sort this out, to confront Ethan and his mother about their obligations. I agreed to meet with them, not out of obligation to Ethan, but to support Lisa, who had always been a pillar in my life. The meeting was set in the very apartment I had left behind. Walking in, I was struck by how much it had changed. The once orderly and stylish space was cluttered, the air heavy with the tension of broken promises and unmet responsibilities. Ethan and Mrs. Harper were there, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and defiance. Lisa, ever the picture of composure, led the discussion. "Ethan, you know the terms of the lease. You've fallen behind, and this can't continue. I'm sorry, but you need to vacate the apartment," she said firmly. Ethan's response was a mix of excuses and pleas for leniency, a far cry from the confident man he once portrayed. Mrs. Harper, too, chimed in, her tone desperate. "Anna, please, you have to help us," she pleaded, turning to me. "You were part of this family, too." But I was no longer the person they once knew. "I'm sorry, but my helping is not an option. You both need to take responsibility for your actions." The meeting ended with a clear understanding that they had to leave the apartment. As I left, I felt a sense of closure, not just for myself, but for a chapter that had long needed ending. It was a poignant reminder of how our choices shape our destinies, and how, in the end, we are all accountable for the paths we choose. As the leaves began to turn, signaling the arrival of autumn, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The challenges, the heartaches, and the triumphs had all woven into the fabric of my life, each thread a vital part of who I had become. The clinic was bustling with activity, a vibrant hub that mirrored my own personal growth. I had expanded my team, bringing in talented individuals who shared my vision of empowering others through self-care. My clients weren't just customers, they were part of a community we were building together. One crisp morning, as I sipped my coffee, I opened a letter from Ethan. It was brief, a simple acknowledgement of our divorce being finalized. The words were formal, but in them I sensed a tone of regret, perhaps even a hint of gratitude. I set the letter aside, feeling a sense of peace. Our chapter had ended, but our stories continued, each on our own path. In the solitude of my apartment, now a cozy sanctuary that reflected my tastes and ambitions, I contemplated the lessons I had learned. I had discovered an inner strength I never knew I possessed, a resilience that had carried me through the storm. I had learned the importance of boundaries, of speaking up for oneself, and of the courage it takes to walk away from situations that no longer serve us. My thoughts turned to Ethan and Mrs. Harper. Despite the pain they had caused, I harbored no ill will. I wished them well on their journey, hoping they would find their own lessons in the choices they had made. Looking ahead, I felt a surge of excitement for the future. My dreams for the clinic were evolving, with plans to collaborate with local charities and expand our wellness programs. Personally, I was open to new experiences, to the possibilities of love and companionship, but on my terms, with the wisdom gained from my past. As I closed the door to my apartment, stepping out into the brisk morning air, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life, with all its unpredictability, was a beautiful, ever-changing tapestry. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, to weave new dreams and adventures into the story of Anna Mitchell. As I watched my belongings alongside Lucas's thrown out like yesterday's trash, Daniel's words echoed with chilling finality. "If you don't like it, leave." Standing there, with our son's hand in mine, I knew this was no longer just about a failing marriage, it was about fighting back for our dignity. I am Evelyn Marshall, a 32-year-old working mother, navigating the complexities of what once was a happy marriage. Now, I stand at the crossroads of a life that seems to be unraveling at the seams. It's a story I never thought I'd tell, but here I am, reflecting on the journey that led me to this moment. My life, contrary to the turbulence now, began in a rather privileged manner. I was born into an affluent family, blessed with the comforts that wealth could bring. Yet, with a spirit yearning for independence, I chose to carve out my own path, determined to earn my living and not just rely on the legacy of my lineage. This decision, while empowering, set the stage for a series of events that would later challenge my very essence. Daniel and I met at the company where we both worked. He was there first, a man of charm and ambition. Our initial days were like pages from a fairy tale, filled with laughter, shared dreams, and a love that seemed to defy all odds. Our courtship was a whirlwind, and marriage felt like a natural progression, a testament to our love. Little did I know it was also the beginning of a slow, simmering discord. You see, despite our shared workplace, our careers took different trajectories. I, perhaps due to my upbringing or sheer drive, ascended the corporate ladder more swiftly than Daniel. This disparity, insignificant in my eyes, began to fester in his. While dating, it was a non-issue, even a source of pride for him. But marriage changed the unspoken dynamics. The man who once celebrated my achievements started viewing them as a mirror reflecting his perceived inadequacies. When Lucas, our son, came into our lives, I thought it would bring us closer, solidify our bond. I took maternity leave, embracing motherhood with all its joys and challenges. Daniel's behavior, however, took a turn that I hadn't anticipated. His comments, initially subtle, grew increasingly bitter. "Must be nice to get money without working," he'd say, his words laced with a disdain that cut through me. The financial support I appreciated turned into a tool for asserting dominance, a way to remind me of my supposed dependence during my leave. The workplace wasn't spared either. Being his superior on professional grounds, I had to maintain a delicate balance between being his wife and his boss. I endeavored to keep our work and personal lives separate, but the lines blurred, the tension palpable. Daniel's pride seemed wounded, not just by my professional stature, but by his perception that his own worth was diminished in comparison. In the midst of this growing estrangement, there was another factor, steadily poisoning the remnants of our marriage. Margaret, Daniel's mother. She was a formidable presence in our lives, casting a long shadow over our marriage. A woman of strong opinions and traditional beliefs. She saw my career achievements not as a matter of pride, but as a transgression of the roles she believed a wife should play. Her words were sharp, often loaded with a disdain for the modern woman I represented. Daniel should be the one leading, she would often say, a sneer barely concealed. A woman's place isn't above her husband. Her words, echoing through our home, only fueled Daniel's growing insecurities. It was as if my success was an indictment of his perceived shortcomings, and Margaret was the judge who passed the verdict. As Daniel's resentment simmered, our home life became strained. He started distancing himself from both Lucas and me. Where there was once laughter and shared moments, there now existed a cold, uncomfortable silence. I watched helplessly as the man I loved transformed into a stranger, his warmth replaced by a bitterness that seemed to stem from a deep well of dissatisfaction and hurt pride. Even as I tried to reach out to bridge the growing chasm between us, Daniel retreated further, often seeking refuge in his mother's company. Margaret's influence became more pronounced, her criticism of my role as a wife and mother growing more frequent and biting. "Leaving such a small child and going to work?" she would chide. "Don't you have any maternal feelings?" Her words stung, but what pained me most was the impact on Lucas. Our son, bright and perceptive, began to sense the tension, the undercurrents of discord that flowed beneath the surface of our family life. He stopped talking about his father and grandmother, his young mind perhaps unable to articulate the confusion and hurt he felt. In stark contrast, my parents provided a haven of unconditional love and support for Lucas. They adored him, filling his world with the affection and attention he so desperately needed. Their home became his refuge, a place where he could be a carefree child, away from the complexities clouding our own home. As I watched Lucas thrive in their presence, a thought began to take root in my mind. The environment at home, the constant tension and coldness, was not wanted for my son. The idea of leaving, once unthinkable, started to seem like a viable, even necessary option. But I was torn, caught between my commitment to my marriage and the well-being of my son. It was in the midst of this turmoil, as I grappled with the decision that lay ahead, that something decisive happened, something that would change the course of our lives forever. The day that altered everything began like any other, but it ended leaving my world in shambles. I returned home from work to find the unthinkable. My belongings, along with Lucas's, were strewn across our yard, discarded like refuse. My heart pounded with a mix of shock and disbelief as I stared at the chaotic scene before me. There, standing with an air of triumph, were Daniel and Margaret. The disdain in their eyes was unmistakable. Daniel's words hit me like a physical blow. "Since Mom's moving in, we've cleared out your stuff. If you don't like it, leave." His voice was cold, devoid of the warmth I once knew. Margaret's sneer was equally cutting. "We don't need a wife who doesn't care for her husband. Take your unattractive grandson and leave." Their words, cruel and unforgiving, echoed in my ears. But amidst the hurt and the shock, a sense of clarity began to emerge. This was not just an attack on me, but on our innocent son, who stood beside me, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. The realization hit me hard. This was no longer the family or the home I once cherished. It was time to leave. With a heavy heart but a resolute mind, I gathered our belongings, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and sorrow. Lucas, still too young to fully grasp the situation, helped quietly, his usual chatter replaced by a somber silence. As I packed, a memory surfaced, a detail about our house that I had almost forgotten. A lease agreement, with a clause that could turn the tables in our favor. But in that moment, I chose to remain silent. Let them believe they had won, for now. My focus was on getting Lucas away from this toxic environment. "We're leaving," I said finally, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Daniel and Margaret looked at each other, smug satisfaction in their eyes. Little did they know, this was not the end, but the beginning of my fight back. With Lucas in tow, I left the house that was no longer a home. The drive to my parents' house was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. As we pulled up, the warm glow from the windows offered a stark contrast to the coldness we had left behind. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. We were safe, We were loved, and most importantly, we were free from the bitterness and cruelty that had overshadowed our lives. The sanctuary of my parents' home felt like a balm to our bruised hearts. Their shock at our sudden arrival quickly gave way to an unwavering support that enveloped Lucas and me. In their embrace, I found the strength that I feared had been drained by the events at our former home. Lucas, ever resilient, adapted quickly to our new reality. The bond he shared with my parents was a joy to behold, their unconditional love filling the void left by his father's abandonment. Watching him play and laugh in their care, I felt a pang of regret for not having made this move sooner. His happiness was a stark reminder of what he had been missing. In the quiet of my old room, now our temporary haven, I contemplated our future. The decision to divorce Daniel became not just a necessity, but a resolve to protect Lucas and myself from further harm. My mind was set. I would ensure that Lucas would never again have to witness the kind of hostility we had experienced. The following days were a blur of activity. Meeting with a lawyer, a longtime acquaintance of my family, I laid out the details of my situation. He listened intently, his expression a mix of professional detachment and personal concern. We discussed the logistics of divorce, custody arrangements, child support, and the division of assets. While I was financially secure, thanks to my earnings and inheritance, I was adamant that Daniel should bear responsibility for his son. Returning to the house to collect the rest of our belongings was a surreal experience. The place that had once been filled with laughter and love now stood empty and silent, a shell of its former self. Lucas clung to my side, his small hand gripping mine tightly as we packed up the remnants of our life there. As we left, I took one last look at the house. It was more than just a building. It was a symbol of a life that could have been. But as I turned away, I felt a sense of liberation. The ties that had bound me to that place, to a life filled with discord and unhappiness, were now severed. With each passing day, the initial shock and pain gave way to a sense of hope and anticipation for the future. Lucas's laughter became the soundtrack of our days, and in his smiles, I found the motivation to rebuild our lives. We were starting over, but this time we were doing it on our own terms. The journey through the legal landscape of divorce was like navigating a stormy sea. My lawyer, seasoned in the ebbs and flows of such proceedings, was a guiding light. The primary focus was securing a fair arrangement for child support. While my financial situation was stable, I insisted that Daniel uphold his responsibilities as Lucas's father. The day we presented the divorce papers to Daniel was charged with tension. His reaction to the child support clause was a mix of disbelief and anger. "Child support? After all the embarrassment you've caused me?" he blustered, his voice a mix of indignation and shock. Margaret, ever the antagonist, chimed in with her usual venom. Why should John pay a dime to this ungrateful woman? Despite their outbursts, I remained resolute, my lawyer calmly explaining the legal obligations and the fairness of the proposed amount. Daniel's frustration was evident, but the realization that his professional reputation could be at stake if he defaulted on his responsibilities seemed to temper his defiance. As we finalized the divorce proceedings, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. Here was Daniel, the man I had once pledged my life to, now a virtual stranger, bound to me only by the legalities of our shared past and our son. In those moments, a range of emotions washed over me. Relief that I was breaking free from a toxic relationship, sorrow for the love that had once been, and a fierce determination to build a better future for Lucas and me. The divorce marked the end of a chapter in my life, but it also signified the start of a new beginning. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, divorce papers in hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the first step towards reclaiming my life and providing Lucas with the stable, loving environment he deserved. With the legal battles behind us, I turned my focus to rebuilding our lives. The support of my parents was invaluable, their love and encouragement a constant source of strength. Lucas thrived in their care, his laughter and playful antics a daily reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. As we settled into our new reality, I found myself looking forward to the future with a sense of hope and optimism. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to walk it with grace and strength for myself and for my son. The days following the divorce were a blend of relief and rebuilding. But amidst this new beginning, a revelation awaited. A twist in our tale that I had kept close to my chest. The house, the battleground of our final conflict, held a secret that was about to turn the tide in my favor. It began with an innocuous phone call from Daniel, now more a stranger than ever. His voice, laced with confusion and anger, pierced through the speaker. "Evelyn, what's this about an eviction notice? Why's it in your name?" I remember pausing for a moment, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. This was it, the moment I had anticipated. "Daniel, the lease needs renewal, and I've decided not to," I replied calmly. The silence on the other end was palpable, as the realization dawned on him. "Yes, Daniel, the house is mine," I continued, the words tasting of both victory and sorrow. "It's part of the properties under my name, inherited from my family." The shock in his voice was evident as he processed the news. All this time, the house he believed to be ours was, in fact, a part of my heritage. The conversation that followed was a mix of disbelief, anger, and desperation. Daniel's tone shifted from accusatory to pleading, as the full extent of his situation became clear. Without the house, he and Margaret were, in essence, homeless. But my decision was firm. The house, a symbol of a past life, needed to be let go, just as I had let go of the relationship. "You need to find somewhere else, Daniel. We're divorced now, and you're no longer my responsibility," I said, a mix of sadness and resolve in my voice. The call ended with Daniel's protest still ringing in my ears, but I knew I had made the right decision. It was not just about the house or the divorce. It was about setting boundaries, about asserting my independence from a relationship that had become toxic. As days turned into weeks, I watched as Daniel and Margaret struggled to find a new place. There was a part of me that felt for their plight, but another part reminded me of the necessity of this harsh lesson. They had to understand that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are irrevocable. Meanwhile, life for Lucas and me was taking a turn for the better. Our small apartment near my parents' house became a haven of peace and stability. Lucas's laughter filled the rooms, a sound that had become my favorite melody. In those moments, watching him play or listening to his endless stories, I knew that no matter the challenges, we would be all right. In the weeks that followed the eviction notice, the reality of their new circumstances began to dawn on Daniel and Margaret. They had been complacent, perhaps assuming that the comfort and stability they enjoyed were unchanging. But now, faced with the immediate need to find a new living situation, their world was thrown into disarray. For Daniel, the challenges were manifold. Not only had he lost his home, but also the stability and support he had taken for granted. His pride, already bruised from the divorce, took another hit as he struggled to come to terms with the consequences of his actions. Margaret, too, faced a harsh awakening. The vision she had of living comfortably with her son, free from the responsibilities she so despised, was shattered. The prospect of finding a new place, especially under strained financial conditions, was daunting. As for me, the aftermath of the divorce and eviction brought a sense of closure. While it was painful to witness their struggles, it also served as a reminder of the importance of self-respect and setting boundaries in relationships. It was a lesson in taking control of one's life, no matter how difficult the choices might be. Meanwhile, Lucas and I settled into our new routine. Our apartment, though smaller than the house we had left behind, was filled with love and laughter. Lucas thrived in this new environment, his resilience a constant source of amazement and pride for me. Our days were filled with simple joys, walks in the park, visits to the library, and evenings spent with my parents, who continued to be a pillar of support. In those moments, surrounded by the people who truly mattered, I found a contentment that had been missing for so long. The experience also taught me the value of looking forward, of not letting the past dictate the future. I began to focus on rebuilding my life, not just for myself, but for Lucas. He deserved a mother who was strong, happy, and present, and I was determined to be just that. The challenges we faced had not only tested our strength, but had also brought us closer. Our bond, forged in adversity, was now unbreakable. And as I looked at Lucas, growing and flourishing despite everything, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together, with love and courage. The dawn of our new life brought with it a sense of renewal and hope. Each day, as I watched Lucas grow and thrive, I was reminded of the resilience of the human spirit. Our small apartment, filled with laughter and love, was a testament to our journey and the strength we had found in each other. Lucas's happiness was my guiding light. His inquisitive eyes, so full of wonder and joy, were a constant reminder of the innocence and purity that life still held. I found myself cherishing the simple moments, his excited chatter about his day at school, the quiet evenings spent reading together, and the weekends exploring the city with my parents. These were the moments that mattered, the memories that would shape his childhood. Professionally, I found a new sense of purpose and fulfillment. With the personal turmoil behind me, I was able to focus on my career with renewed vigor. My achievements, no longer overshadowed by the complexities of my personal life, became sources of pride and satisfaction. As I navigated my new reality, I also learned the importance of self-care and self-love. I found solace in small acts of kindness towards myself, a quiet evening with a book, a leisurely walk in the park, or a coffee date with a friend. These moments of solitude and reflection were crucial in rediscovering myself, in understanding who I was beyond the roles of mother and professional. Most importantly, I became acutely aware of the impact of relationships on one's life. The support and love of my parents, the unwavering bond with Lucas, and the solidarity of friends who stood by me through the darkest times were my pillars of strength. They taught me the value of genuine connections, of surrounding oneself with people who uplift and inspire. As for Daniel, our paths rarely crossed, except for the occasional formalities regarding Lucas. The bitterness that once marred our interactions had given way to a detached civility. While the love we once shared was lost, I held no ill will. Instead, I chose to focus on the present and the future, on the life I was building for myself and my son. In the end, the journey I had embarked on, fraught with challenges and heartaches, led me to a place of peace and contentment. It was a journey of self-discovery, of learning that strength sometimes lies in letting go, and that true happiness comes from within. As I watched Lucas play, his laughter ringing through our home, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the love received, and for the new beginnings that lay ahead. Our story was one of triumph, not just over the circumstances we faced, but over the doubts and fears that once held us back. And so, we moved forward hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever the future held, with love, hope, and an unwavering faith in the journey of life. Hey, take care of this, will you? Daniel, my husband of 8 years, barely looked at me as he flung his leather bag across the room, its contents scattering like fallen leaves in autumn. The bag landed with a thud, papers spilling out onto the hardwood floor. I sighed, a familiar sense of resignation washing over me. Lately, this was how our conversations usually began, or rather his orders. I bent down, gathering the strewn papers, when a particular document caught my eye. It was stark, official-looking, and utterly unexpected, a divorce paper. My heart sank. Then, oddly, a wave of relief followed. The kind of relief you feel when a long-dreaded inevitability finally stares you in the face. Daniel's part was already filled in. He had made his decision, without so much as a conversation. The realization stung, but it was also liberating in a strange way. Without a second thought, I found myself reaching for a pen. My hand trembled slightly as I filled in my details. Sarah Thompson, I wrote, my name etching the end of an era. I paused, looking at the man I once thought I knew. Daniel was lounging on the sofa, mindlessly flipping through TV channels. The man who had once been my partner, my confidant, had become a stranger. Sarah, what's for dinner? His voice, devoid of warmth, pulled me back to the present. I turned to him, the divorce papers still in my hand. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. Daniel finally looked at me, his eyes narrowing. What about? This. I held up the paper. His expression changed from indifference to surprise, and then to something I couldn't quite decipher. You found that, huh? He finally said, a smirk playing on his lips. Yes, I did, and I've made my decision, I replied, my own voice laced with a firm resolve I didn't know I had. The room filled with a heavy silence, one that spoke volumes more than our brief exchange of words. It was the silence of a chapter closing, of a new beginning taking shape amidst the ruins of the old. As I stood there, Holding the symbol of our failed marriage, I realized this was just the beginning. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of control over my own destiny. The silence lingered in the air long after Daniel had retreated to our bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The stillness of the room was a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I sat down on the couch, the divorce papers still clutched in my hand, and my mind began to drift back to the beginning, to the days when everything seemed so promising. We had met at a networking event for professionals. Daniel, with his charismatic smile and confident demeanor, had seemed like a breath of fresh air. "Sarah Thompson, right? I've heard a lot about your marketing skills," he had said, extending a hand that I shook, unaware of how significantly this moment would alter my life. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and soon we were meeting for coffee, then dinner, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. Daniel was attentive, kind, always knowing what to say to make me laugh. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found someone who understood me so well. As I sat on the couch, lost in the memories of our early days, a stark realization hit me. Those days were long gone, replaced by a cold indifference that had crept into our marriage so subtly that I hadn't noticed until it was too late. I thought back to the little things that started to change after our wedding. The way Daniel's sweet messages became less frequent, how our conversations turned from deep and engaging to functional and brief. It was a gradual shift, one that didn't alarm me at first. I had convinced myself that this was just what happened in marriages over time. Comfort, I told myself, often replaced passion. But comfort didn't mean disrespect. It didn't mean coming home to a husband who barely acknowledged your existence unless he needed something. The man I had fallen in love with, who had promised to be my partner in life, had slowly morphed into someone I no longer recognized. The sound of a car outside snapped me back to reality. I glanced at the clock. It was late. I had been sitting there, lost in thought, for hours. The house was quiet, Daniel likely asleep, uncaring of the storm he had unwittingly unleashed in me. I stood up, my resolve strengthening. The Sarah who walked into this room a few hours ago was not the same Sarah now. The discovery of the divorce papers had opened my eyes to a truth I had been avoiding. Our marriage was over, and it was time for me to reclaim my life. I placed the divorce papers on the table, a symbolic gesture of my readiness to face whatever came next. Tomorrow, I would start the process of untangling my life from Daniel's. It would be challenging, but I knew I had to do it, not just for my own sake, but for the woman I once was and the woman I needed to become again. As I headed to bed, a sense of determination filled me. The road ahead would be filled with obstacles, but I was ready to face them head-on. This was not just the end of my marriage, but the beginning of a new chapter in my life. The morning light spilled into the bedroom, casting a warm glow on the walls. It was a new day, but the weight of my decision still rested heavily on my shoulders. As I made my way to the kitchen, the house felt unusually quiet, almost as if it were holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. Daniel was already up, sitting at the dining table, his eyes fixated on the morning paper. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, a stark reminder of the distance that had grown between us. I busied myself with making coffee, the familiar routine providing a semblance of normalcy in the chaos of my emotions. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, a comforting presence in an otherwise tense atmosphere. "Sarah," Daniel's voice broke the silence, his tone surprisingly soft. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "Yes?" "We need to talk about this," he said, gesturing towards the divorce papers that lay between us. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Yes, we do." The conversation that followed was a far cry from the heated arguments we had become accustomed to. Instead, it was a candid, albeit painful, acknowledgement of where we had ended up. Daniel spoke of his frustrations, his sense of being trapped in a life he hadn't envisioned. I listened, not with the intent to argue, but to understand. As he spoke, I couldn't help but wonder how we had missed the signs. The late nights at the office, the weekends spent apart, the growing silences at dinner, they were all telltale signs of a marriage unraveling at the seams. "I just feel like we're living separate lives under the same roof," Daniel finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I feel the same," I replied, the truth of my words hitting me with full force. We were two strangers sharing a life that no longer existed. The conversation shifted to practicalities: the house, our finances, the inevitable legal proceedings. It was a surreal experience, discussing the end of our marriage with a calmness that but belied the turmoil within. As the morning turned into afternoon, we reached a mutual understanding. The divorce was inevitable, but we would handle it amicably, respecting the love that once was. After Daniel left the house, presumably to meet with a lawyer, I found myself alone with my thoughts. The finality of our conversation had left me drained, yet there was an underlying sense of relief. The veil of pretense had been lifted, and in its place was a clarity that had been missing for years. I wandered into the living room, my eyes falling on the paintings that adorned the walls. They were remnants of a passion I had long forgotten, my love for digital art. In the early years of our marriage, I would spend hours creating vibrant landscapes and abstract designs, losing myself in the colors and shapes. But as my marriage began to crumble, so did my desire to create. Standing there, surrounded by my own art, a spark ignited within me. It was a reminder of who I was before, a woman with dreams, passions, and a zest for life. A woman who deserved more than the shadows of a loveless marriage. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not only reclaim my life, but also my passion. I would start painting again, not just to fill the void left by my broken marriage, but to rediscover the part of me that I had lost along the way. With renewed purpose, I turned on my computer and opened my digital art software, a familiar welcome screen greeting me. It felt like coming home. As I began to sketch, the lines and colors flowing effortlessly from my fingertips, a sense of peace enveloped me. It was the peace of a woman who had faced her fears, who had taken the first step towards a new beginning. Days turned into weeks as I navigated the murky waters of divorce proceedings. Despite the amicability we had agreed upon, each meeting with Daniel felt like retracing steps in a dance we no longer understood. However, amidst this turmoil, I found solace in my rediscovered passion for digital art. The more I immersed myself in my creations, the more I felt the pieces of my old self falling back into place. One evening, as I sat in front of my computer, lost in a complex design, a series of pings from my phone broke my concentration. It was Ethan, our son. "Mom, can we have dinner this weekend?" "I have some news," his message read. Ethan had been our one constant source of joy. His light-hearted nature and youthful optimism had often been the glue that held us together in our darker days. I replied immediately, agreeing to the dinner. Saturday arrived, and I found myself sitting across from Ethan at our favorite Italian restaurant. He had the same sparkling eyes and easy smile that had always reminded me of Daniel in our happier times. "So, what's this news you have?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Ethan's smile widened. "I'm getting engaged," he announced, his excitement contagious. I felt a burst of happiness for him, mixed with a tinge of sadness for the family life we could no longer give him. "That's wonderful, Ethan. Tell me about her." As Ethan shared stories about his fiancée, his plans for the future, I couldn't help but reflect on the cycle of life. Here was my son, on the cusp of building his own life, his own family, while mine was unraveling. The dinner continued with light-hearted chatter, but my mind kept drifting back to Daniel. I wondered if he knew about Ethan's engagement, if it mattered to him at all. Driving home later that evening, a sense of loneliness enveloped me. The house that once echoed with the laughter and arguments of a family now stood silent, a monument to a life that once was. In the days that followed, as I worked on my art, I found myself reflecting on the bonds that had once tied us as a family. Ethan had always been our anchor, but even he couldn't prevent the drifting apart of two people who had lost their way. My thoughts were often interrupted by memories of Daniel's recent interactions with Julia, his coworker. I remembered the late-night calls, the weekend meetings that he insisted were for work. I had trusted him, never questioning his loyalty. But now doubt crept in, its insidious tendrils wrapping around my heart. Was there more to Daniel's relationship with Julia than just work? The thought nagged at me, an itch that I couldn't quite reach. I remembered the casual touches, the shared laughs, the way they seemed to exist in a world of their own during company functions. I shook my head, trying to rid myself of these thoughts. It didn't matter now. Daniel and I were on separate paths, our journey together, nothing but a memory. As I continued to delve into my art, I realized it was more than just a hobby. It was my lifeline, pulling me away from the edge of despair. With each stroke of my digital brush, I felt a sense of purpose, a reminder that there was life beyond the ruins of a failed marriage. The weeks leading up to Ethan's engagement party were a blur of activity and mixed emotions. While I busied myself with preparations, a part of me dreaded the event. It would be the first family gathering since Daniel and I had decided to divorce, and the thought of facing him in a room full of people filled me with unease. The day of the party arrived, and the atmosphere was festive, filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Ethan and his fiancée, a charming young woman named Anna, were the picture of happiness. Watching them, a sense of melancholy washed over me. They were beginning their journey together, full of hopes and dreams, while mine with Daniel was coming to an end. As guests mingled, I caught sight of Daniel across the room. Our eyes met briefly, 1,000 words passing between us in that silent exchange. He looked older, more tired, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of the old affection. But it was quickly replaced by the stark reality of our situation. The evening progressed, and I found myself in conversation with some of Ethan's friends. Their youthful enthusiasm was infectious, and for a while I forgot the complexities of my own life. It was then that I noticed Daniel talking to Julia in a corner of the room. They were laughing, their heads close together in a way that was intimately familiar. The sight struck a nerve, and a surge of emotions welled up inside me. The doubts that had been simmering in my mind came to the forefront. The more I observed them, the clearer it became. There was something between them. Something more than just professional camaraderie. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, the realization of Daniel's betrayal hitting me like a wave. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself standing outside, taking in the cool night air. The sounds of the party faded into the background, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Ethan joined me, his expression softening as he saw my troubled face. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, concern etched in his voice. I forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine, just a little tired, that's all." Ethan looked at me, his eyes searching for the truth. "Mom, you know you can talk to me about anything, right?" I nodded, grateful for his support. "I know, honey, and I will. Just not tonight." He hugged me, a gesture of comfort that brought tears to my eyes. As he went back inside, I stood there, feeling the weight of the evening. The drive home was a reflection of my thoughts, long and winding. The sight of Daniel and Julia together had confirmed my suspicions, and with that confirmation came a sense of closure. I realized that it was time to let go, not just of Daniel, but of the life we had built together. As I lay in bed that night, the events of the evening replayed in my mind. The laughter, the music, and most of all, Daniel and Julia. It was the end of a chapter, but as with all endings, there was also the promise of a new beginning. In the weeks following Ethan's engagement party, I found myself in a state of introspection. The revelation of Daniel's relationship with Julia, though painful, had given me a sense of closure. It was as if a final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, allowing me to see the complete picture of our failed marriage. With this newfound clarity, I threw myself into my art with a vigor I hadn't felt in years. My digital canvases became a kaleidoscope of emotions, each piece reflecting a different facet of my journey: pain, hope, resilience. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my feelings into something tangible and beautiful. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were moving along, albeit slowly. Daniel and I had settled into a routine of distant yet cordial interactions, a far cry from the turbulent exchanges of our earlier meetings. It was a strange kind of dance, two people moving around each other, careful not to step on old wounds. One afternoon, as I sat working on a particularly intricate design, my phone rang. It was the lawyer, informing me that the divorce was finalized. The words hit me with an unexpected force. Even though I had been preparing for this moment, the finality of it left me feeling oddly hollow. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The young, hopeful woman who had married Daniel, full of dreams and aspirations, was now a more mature, seasoned version of herself. I had lost some of my naivety, but in its place I had gained strength and a deeper understanding of myself. One evening, as I sat gazing at the latest piece I had created, a vibrant depiction of a phoenix rising from the ashes, Ethan called. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something," he said, his voice serious. We met at a small cafe the next day. Ethan's expression was a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Anna and I were talking, and we'd like you to move in with us after we get married," he blurted out. The offer took me by surprise. "Ethan, I can't intrude on your new life like that," I protested, touched by his concern but wary of imposing. "It's not an intrusion, Mom. We want you there. Anna loves the idea, and I don't want you to be alone." His words warmed my heart. Here was my son, embarking on a new chapter in his life, yet still looking out for me. It was a testament to the bond we shared, one that had only grown stronger through the trials of the past year. After much discussion, I agreed. It was a new beginning, not just for Ethan and Anna, but for me as well. A chance to be part of their life, to share in their joys and challenges, while also giving myself the space to continue my own journey. As I packed up my belongings over the next few weeks, I felt a sense of bittersweet nostalgia. Each item, each piece of art, was a reminder of a life lived, of lessons learned, and of the resilience that had carried me through. Moving day arrived, and as I stepped into Ethan and Anna's home, I felt a sense of belonging. It was a new environment, but one that was filled with love and warmth. Ethan and Anna had gone out of their way to make me feel welcome, setting up a small studio for me to continue my art. In the days that followed, I found a new rhythm to my life. I spent my mornings working on my art, exploring new techniques and styles. In the evenings, I would join Ethan and Anna for dinner, sharing stories and laughter. It was during one of these dinners that Ethan turned to me, a serious look in his eyes. "Mom, how are you really doing? After everything with Dad, I mean." I took a moment to reflect, then smiled. "I'm doing okay, Ethan. Better than okay, actually. I've found a new purpose in my art, and being here with you and Anna has given me a sense of family that I thought I had lost." Ethan smiled, relief evident in his eyes. "I'm glad, Mom. You deserve to be happy." As we continued our dinner chatting about everything and nothing, I realized that this was what healing looked like. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change, but a gradual rebuilding of oneself, piece by piece. And as I looked around the table, at the faces of my son and his fiancée, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. In this new beginning, I had found not just a place to live, but a home. Living with Ethan and Anna brought a sense of harmony and companionship that I hadn't realized I was missing. Their youthful energy and love for each other were infectious, and I found myself looking forward to the simple pleasures of our daily life together. One afternoon, as I was setting up my art supplies in the small studio Ethan had arranged for me, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I opened it, and to my surprise, it was from Julia, Daniel's coworker. "Sarah, can we meet? There's something I need to tell you about Daniel," the message read. My heart skipped a beat. What could Julia possibly have to say about Daniel now after all this time? Curiosity piqued. I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe the next day. Sitting across from Julia, I noticed the nervousness in her eyes. She fidgeted with her coffee cup before speaking. "Sarah, I owe you an apology," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Daniel and we had an affair. It started before your divorce. I didn't realize the extent of the damage we were causing." Her confession, though not entirely unexpected, still stung. I had suspected their relationship, but hearing it confirmed brought back a flood of emotions. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Julia sighed, a look of genuine remorse on her face. "I ended things with Daniel. It was wrong, and I regret it deeply. I just thought you deserved to know the truth." I sat there, processing her words. Part of me wanted to be angry, to lash out at the woman who had been part of my marriage's downfall. But another part, the part that had found peace and moved on, simply felt pity. "Julia, what's done is done," I said finally. "I appreciate you telling me, but I've moved on. I hope you can too." Leaving the cafe, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Julia's confession had closed the final chapter on a part of my life that was now firmly in the past. Over the next few months, my life settled into a comfortable routine. My art was flourishing, with several pieces being featured in local exhibitions. Ethan and Anna's wedding was fast approaching, and the excitement in the house was palpable. As I watched Ethan and Anna together, so full of love and hope for the future, I couldn't help but reflect on my own journey. The pain of the past had given way to a quiet strength, a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The wedding day arrived, a beautiful ceremony filled with laughter, tears, and an overwhelming sense of joy. Watching Ethan and Anna exchange their vows, I felt an immense pride for the man my son had become. After the wedding, as guests mingled and danced, I found myself standing alone for a moment, taking it all in. It was then that I saw Daniel, standing a short distance away, watching me. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, time stood still. There was so much I wanted to say, so many questions I wanted to ask. But as I looked at him, I realized that none of it mattered anymore. Daniel nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us. Then, turning away, he disappeared into the crowd. As I rejoined the celebration, a sense of peace settled over me. My journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had led me here, to this moment of contentment and hope. Life, I realized, was a tapestry of experiences, each thread woven with its own story. Some were dark, others bright, but all were essential in creating the larger picture. And as I danced with Ethan, my heart full of love and gratitude, I knew that my tapestry was still being woven, each day adding a new and beautiful thread to the story of my life.
The day I walked out of Bedford Hills Correctional, the autumn air hit differently than it had 5 years ago. Freedom should have tasted sweet, but all I could taste was bile rising in my throat as I looked at the photo in my trembling hands. My sister Danielle in a wedding dress, standing next to my husband Louis. My daughter Evelyn, barely visible in the background, looked so grown up it made my heart ache. My name is Maya, and until 5 years ago, I was living what I thought was the perfect life. Senior partner at a prestigious law firm, beautiful home in Westchester, and a family I would have died for. Funny how life has a way of showing you just how wrong you can be about everything. Maya. A familiar voice cut through my thoughts. I looked up to see Alana, my former colleague, waiting by her car. She rushed over and wrapped me in a tight hug. God, I've missed you. Thanks for coming, I managed, my voice rough from disuse. 5 years of minimal human contact does that to you. Get in, we have a lot to talk about. Alana's face was grim as she opened the passenger door. During the drive, she filled me in on what the newspapers hadn't. Louis and Danielle got married 2 years ago. They're living in your old house. With my daughter. The words felt like glass in my mouth. Maya, Alana glanced at me. There's more. They're trying to terminate your parental rights permanently. I closed my eyes, remembering the last time I saw Evelyn. She was 5, crying and reaching for me as they led me away in handcuffs. They can't do that. They're claiming abandonment due to incarceration. Louis has some heavyweight lawyers working on it. Abandonment? I laughed bitterly. They put me here. They orchestrated everything. I know. Alana's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. And I think I finally have proof. We pulled up to a small diner off the highway. Inside, an elegant older woman sat alone in a corner booth, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. My heart stopped when I recognized her. Athena? I whispered. Louis's mother looked up, her steel-gray eyes meeting mine. Hello, Maya. Please sit. Alana squeezed my shoulder and stepped away, giving us privacy. I slid into the booth, my prison-issued bag clutched in my lap like a shield. I suppose you're wondering why I'm here, Athena said, stirring her coffee. The thought crossed my mind. I know what my son did to you. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. And I have proof. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, emails, and photographs, a paper trail leading straight to Louis and the fabricated evidence that had put me away. Why are you helping me? I asked, suspicious. Athena had never approved of me, had fought against our marriage from day one. Because I watched my son destroy a good woman's life. Because my granddaughter deserves better than to be raised by 2 people who could do something so despicable. She leaned forward. And because I know exactly what it's like to be betrayed by family. A waitress approached, but Athena waved her away. Louis thinks he's untouchable now. He's followed in his father's footsteps, building his life on lies and other people's misery. Her voice hardened. I stayed quiet once before, when his father did similar things. I won't make that mistake again. What do you want from me? I want justice. For you, for Evelyn, and for others they've hurt. She pulled out another document. This is a record of Louis's offshore accounts. He's been laundering money through his firm for years, the same firm where your sister is now a partner. My chest tightened. Danielle had always been jealous of my success, my marriage, my life, but I never thought she'd go this far. I have resources, Athena continued, connections, people who owe me favors. Help me bring them down, and I'll help you get your daughter back. I stared at the evidence in front of me, thinking of Evelyn growing up in a house built on lies, thinking of Louis and Danielle, sleeping in my bed, living my life, while I spent 5 years in a cell. When do we start? I asked. Athena's smile was sharp as a blade. We already have. Your friend Alana has been gathering evidence for months. We just needed you free to make the next move. Through the diner's window, I watched the sunset paint the sky blood red. 5 years ago, I was a woman who believed in the law, in justice, in family. Now I was something else, something forged in betrayal and hardened by time. They took everything from me, I said quietly. Then let's take it all back. Athena reached across the table and gripped my hand. Every last piece. Athena's penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park, the kind of place that screamed old money and carefully guarded secrets. I sat at her marble kitchen island while Alana spread documents across the surface like dealing cards. These transactions don't make sense, Alana said, pointing to a series of numbers. Louis has been moving millions through these accounts, but his firm's declared income doesn't match up. That's because he's been cooking the books since he made partner, Athena replied, sliding a fresh cup of coffee toward me. Just like his father taught him. We need more than just suspicious transactions, I said, my lawyer's mind already working. We need concrete proof of fraud. The doorbell rang and Athena smiled. That would be our other guest. A man in his 40s walked in, his tie loosened and jacket wrinkled from a long day. I recognized him immediately. Ken? Ken Dixon, the prosecutor who'd put me away, looked different now, older, wearier. Maya, I've spent 5 years trying to figure out how I got it so wrong. You didn't get it wrong, I said. You just didn't have all the pieces. He set his briefcase on the counter. I do now, and I'm here to help make it right. Ken's been investigating Louis's firm for the past year, Athena explained. Off the books, of course. The evidence that convicted you? Ken pulled out a thick file. It was perfect. Too perfect. I should have seen it then. Louis had years to plan it, I said, my voice bitter. He and Danielle thought of everything. Not everything. Alana pointed to her laptop screen. Look at this. Every month, large sums move from these offshore accounts to a trust in the Caymans. The beneficiary is listed as EJ Holdings. Evelyn Jackson, I whispered. He's hiding money in our daughter's name? Classic move, Ken said. He's using her trust fund to launder money. Probably thinks no one would look too closely at a child's account. But that's not all. Athena pulled up another document on her tablet. Louis has been bribing judges, 3 of them, including the one who presided over your case. My hands clenched around my coffee cup. How do we prove it? We already have proof. Ken smiled grimly. One of the judges came forward last month. He's wearing a wire. The thing about my son, Athena said, pouring herself a drink, is that he inherited his father's arrogance along with his corruption. He thinks he's untouchable. A notification pinged on Alana's laptop. She clicked it open and gasped. Maya, you need to see this. It was an email from Danielle to Louis dated just before my arrest. Everything's in place. The evidence will lead exactly where we want it to. She'll never see it coming. My vision blurred with tears of rage. My own sister. We can use this, Ken said quietly. But we need to be smart. If we move too fast, Lewis will bury everything. I want to see Evelyn, I said suddenly. I need to see my daughter. The room fell silent. Finally, Athena spoke. She's at dance class every Tuesday afternoon. The studio on 73rd Street. Maya, Alana warned, if Lewis or Danielle find out... I don't care. I stood up. I've missed 5 years of her life. I'm not missing another day. Ken reached into his pocket and handed me a business card. My private number. Call me if anything goes wrong. The next afternoon, I stood across the street from the dance studio, my heart pounding. Through the large windows, I could see young girls in leotards at the bar, and there she was, my Evelyn, taller now, her dark hair in a neat bun. She moved with grace, serious and focused, just like I remembered. She has your determination. I spun around. David, my childhood friend, stood there with a sad smile. Alana called me, he explained. Thought you might need backup. David... I hadn't seen him since the trial, where he'd tried desperately to defend me. I'm sorry I pushed you away. You did what you had to do to survive. He touched my arm gently, but you're not alone anymore. The dance class ended and girls began streaming out. Evelyn emerged, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and our eyes met across the street. For a moment, time stopped. Mom? Her voice was barely a whisper, but I heard it clear as a bell. Before I could move, a car pulled up. Danielle stepped out, her designer sunglasses hiding her eyes. Evelyn! Time to go, honey! My daughter looked between us, confusion and something else. Fear on her face. Danielle followed her gaze and froze when she saw me. Maya. She took a step forward. David's hand tightened on my arm. Not here, he murmured. Not now. I watched as Danielle hurried Evelyn into the car, my sister's hands shaking as she closed the door. Before they drove away, Evelyn pressed her palm against the window, her eyes locked on mine. Soon, I promised silently. I'm coming for you soon. She saw me. I paced Athena's living room, unable to sit still. Danielle will tell Lewis. Good, Athena said, typing rapidly on her laptop. Let him get rattled. People make mistakes when they're scared. David handed me a glass of water. Maya, sit down before you wear a hole in that expensive carpet. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. My hand shook as I read it. Mom, is that really you? Please answer. Evelyn, I breathed. But how? She's 10, Maya, David said gently. Kids that age know how to get burner accounts. I started typing, but Athena grabbed my phone. Wait, we need to be careful. They could be monitoring her devices. The doorbell rang. Alana burst in, waving a USB drive. You're not going to believe what I found. Lewis has been busy since you went away. She plugged the drive into Athena's computer and pulled up several documents. These are records of property purchases, all through shell companies. But look at the dates. These align perfectly with his major court victories, I said, scanning the documents. Properties bought just days after winning cases. Kickbacks, David muttered. He was getting paid under the table. There's more. Alana clicked through more files. Remember Judge Harrison? My blood ran cold. Judge Harrison had presided over my case. What about him? He bought a vacation home in Bermuda 3 weeks after your conviction. Guess who handled the transaction? Lewis, Athena finished, through one of his shell companies. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Evelyn. Mom, Aunt Danielle is crying in her room. Dad's yelling. I'm scared. Before anyone could stop me, I typed back, I love you, sweetheart. Stay strong. Everything will be okay soon. Maya, Athena warned, but I held up my hand. She needs to know she's not alone. My voice cracked. She needs to know her mother didn't abandon her. The door flew open. Ken rushed in, his face flushed. We have a problem. Judge Harrison was found dead in his office an hour ago. The room went silent. Suicide? David asked. Ken shook his head. Made to look like it, but my contact in homicide says the scene feels staged. Lewis, Athena whispered. He's cleaning house. My phone rang. Danielle's number. Everyone stared as I answered and put it on speaker. Maya? Her voice was shaky. Please, I need to talk to you. There's nothing to say. You don't understand. Louis, he's not who you think. He's not who I thought. She lowered her voice. I found something in his office. Something bad. Really bad. Why should I trust you? Because I'm scared, Maya. For me. For Evelyn. She started crying. He's been acting strange since he saw you at the dance studio, making calls, shredding documents. He has a gun now. Alana was already tracing the call, mouthing, "Keep her talking." Why did you do it, Danielle? I asked, the question that had haunted me for 5 years. Why did you help him destroy me? Because I was in love with him. Because I was jealous. You always had everything, the grades, the career, the perfect life. I wanted it. I wanted what you had. She took a shuddering breath. But not like this. Not anymore. Where's Evelyn now? At home, in her room. Louis is at the office. A pause. Maya, there's a safe in his study. The combination is Evelyn's birthday. Everything you need is in there. Ken was already on his phone, speaking quietly to someone. Danielle, I said, if you're setting me up again. I'm not. I swear on Mom and Dad's graves. Another pause. I'm so sorry, Maya. For everything. The line went dead. Got it, Alana said. She's at your old house. It could be a trap, David warned. Or it could be our chance, Ken said, hanging up his phone. I can have a warrant within the hour. Athena stood up. I'm coming with you. No, I said firmly. I need you to do something else. If this goes wrong, someone needs to be ready to take Evelyn. She nodded, understanding. I'll have my driver standing by. Maya, David caught my arm. Let me come with you. Please. I looked at my old friend, seeing the concern in his eyes. Okay, but we do this my way. Ken checked his watch. Warrant will be ready in 40 minutes. We move then. I picked up my phone and sent one last message to Evelyn. Whatever happens tonight, remember I love you more than anything in this world. The response came seconds later. I love you too, Mom. Come get me. Athena handed me a small key. To the back door. Louis never changed the locks. He was too arrogant to think anyone would dare break in. As we gathered our things, I caught my reflection in the window. 5 years ago, I was a victim. Tonight, I was something else entirely. Let's go get my daughter, I said. The house looked exactly the same. White colonial, black shutters, maple tree in the front yard where Evelyn's old swing still hung. But now police cars lined the street, their lights off, waiting. Remember, Ken whispered as we crouched behind the hedges. We have 15 minutes before the warrant arrives. We're just here to get Evelyn and any evidence in that safe. David squeezed my hand. You sure about this? I nodded, clutching the key Athena had given me. Through the kitchen window, I could see Danielle pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Now, Ken signaled. We moved silently around to the back door. The key slid in smoothly, just like it had hundreds of times before. Inside, the house smelled different. Unfamiliar perfume, different laundry detergent. Wrong. Danielle spun around as we entered. Maya! Thank God! Her mascara was streaked with tears. Louis is coming. He knows something's wrong. Where's Evelyn? I demanded. Upstairs. She's... Mom? Evelyn appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her dance clothes. She flew down the steps and into my arms. I held her tight, breathing in her familiar scent. Baby, I missed you so much. I knew you'd come back, she whispered. I knew you weren't bad like they said. The safe, Ken reminded me gently. We need to hurry. David stayed with Evelyn while Danielle led us to Louis's study. The safe was hidden behind a painting. My old favorite, I noticed bitterly. 8:15:12, Danielle recited. Evelyn's birthday. The safe clicked open. Inside were stacks of documents, USB drives, and a small black notebook. That's his ledger, Danielle said. All his contacts, all the bribes, everything. Headlights swept across the windows. A car door slammed. He's here, Danielle whispered, face draining of color. Ken grabbed the safe's contents. Maya, Take Evelyn and go. Now. The front door opened. Danielle? Lewis's voice. Why are all the lights on? I ran for the stairs, but Evelyn was already heading down, David behind her. Well, well. Lewis stood in the foyer, blocking the exit. He looked exactly the same. Handsome, well-dressed, cold eyes. Family reunion? It's over, Lewis, I said, pushing Evelyn behind me. We have everything. He smiled, reaching into his jacket. No, Maya, you have nothing. The gun looked black and deadly in his manicured hand. Daddy, no! Evelyn screamed. Be quiet, sweetheart. The adults are talking. His eyes fixed on Danielle. You betrayed me. You betrayed all of us first, Danielle shot back, her voice shaking. You're just like your father, a monster in an expensive suit. Funny you should mention my father. Lewis's smile widened. Did you know he didn't really die of a heart attack? Mother Dearest helped him along with his medication. Isn't that right, Mom? Athena stepped through the front door, making us all jump. You knew? I found the proof last year. Been keeping it as insurance. He gestured with the gun. Speaking of insurance, Maya, did you really think I wouldn't have cameras in my own house? Everything that's happened tonight is recorded. Self-defense will be easy to prove when I find intruders in my home. Drop the gun, Lewis. Ken emerged from the study, his own weapon drawn. Police are outside. It's finished. Nothing's finished. Lewis's composure cracked. I built this life. Everything I have. I earned. By stealing my life? I stepped forward. By taking my daughter? By killing a judge? I did it for us, he said to Evelyn. Everything I did was to give you a better life. You took my mom away, Evelyn cried. You lied to me. Put the gun down, Ken repeated. Don't make this worse. Lewis's hand trembled. I can't go to prison. I can't. Lewis! Athena's voice cracked like a whip. Look at your daughter. Look at what you're doing to her. For a moment, something human flickered in his eyes. Then sirens wailed outside, and red and blue lights flooded the windows. No! He raised the gun. 3 things happened at once. Danielle lunged for Lewis, Ken fired, and David tackled me and Evelyn to the ground. The gunshot seemed to echo forever. When I looked up, Lewis was on the floor clutching his shoulder. Danielle had his gun, hands shaking as she held it on him. Police burst through the door shouting commands. Someone help me up. Evelyn clung to me, sobbing. Maya? David touched my face. You okay? I nodded, watching as officers handcuffed Lewis. He locked eyes with me as they led him past. You'll regret this, he spat. No, I said quietly. I only regret trusting you in the first place. Athena approached Lewis, her face hard. Your father would be proud. You managed to destroy this family even more thoroughly than he did. As they took him away, Evelyn's small hand slipped into mine. Can I come home with you now? I pulled her close, feeling David's steady presence behind us. Yes, baby, we're going home. Outside, the night was alive with police lights and voices, but all I could feel was my daughter's hand in mine, and the weight of 5 years finally lifting from my shoulders. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I sat beside Ken, watching Lewis being led to the witness stand. 2 weeks had passed since that night at the house, and now everything was coming to light. Please state your name for the record, the judge said. Lewis Michael Jackson. His arm was still in a sling, his designer suit replaced by one that seemed a size too large. He wouldn't look at me. Mr. Jackson, Ken stood. Let's discuss the events leading up to your first wife's imprisonment. Objection! Lewis's attorney jumped up. My client's previous testimony is now in question due to new evidence, the judge cut in. Proceed, Mr. Dixon. Ken held up the black notebook from the safe. Can you identify this? Lewis's jaw tightened. It appears to be my personal notebook. The one where you recorded your bribes? The payments to Judge Harrison? I want to make a statement, Lewis said suddenly. His attorney looked startled. Lewis, we discussed. I need to speak. He finally looked at me, then at Evelyn, who sat between David and Athena in the gallery. I did it. All of it. I framed Maya. I bribed Harrison. He swallowed. I arranged his death when he threatened to confess. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Evelyn buried her face in David's shoulder. "And your current wife, Danielle Rose?" Ken pressed. "What was her role?" "She didn't know about Harrison. That was all me." Lewis's voice cracked. "But she helped frame Maya. We both wanted..." "Wanted what?" "Everything she had." The words seemed to deflate him. Maya was perfect. The perfect lawyer, perfect wife, perfect mother. Danielle always resented her success. And I needed her gone to access certain accounts, to hide what I'd been doing at the firm. Ken nodded to the bailiff, who opened the courtroom doors. Danielle walked in, escorted by 2 officers. She looked small, defeated. "Ms. Rose," Ken said, "please tell the court what you discovered in your husband's study the night of his arrest." Danielle's voice shook. Records, proof that he'd been embezzling from client accounts for years, that he'd arranged Harrison's murder, and, she looked at me, evidence that he'd planned Maya's frame-up months in advance. He used my jealousy against me, made me think it was my idea. "Your Honor," Ken turned to the judge, "the state moves to immediately vacate Maya's conviction based on this testimony and the supporting evidence." "So ordered," the judge said without hesitation. "Ms. Jackson's record will be expunged." Lewis slumped in the witness box. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Save it," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "You're only sorry you got caught." The rest of the hearing passed in a blur. Lewis and Danielle were both taken into custody, him for murder and fraud, her for conspiracy. As people filed out of the courtroom, Evelyn ran to me. "Is it really over?" she asked. "Almost." I smoothed her hair. "We still have the custody hearing tomorrow." "That won't be necessary," a voice said. We turned to see Lewis's attorney. "My client has agreed to surrender all parental rights. He says..." The lawyer glanced at his notes. "He says it's the least he can do." Athena approached, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Well, that's one decent decision he's made." "Mom?" Evelyn tugged my sleeve. "Can we see Aunt Danielle before they take her away?" I hesitated, but David touched my shoulder. "Let her say goodbye." Danielle was waiting in a conference room, handcuffed and guarded. She started crying when she saw Evelyn. "I'm so sorry," she said to both of us. "Maya, I know I can never make it right." "No," I agreed, "you can't. But you helped bring him down in the end. That counts for something." "Will you write to me?" Evelyn asked her. "From where you're going?" Danielle wiped her eyes. "If your mom says it's okay." I nodded slightly. Despite everything, she was still my sister, still Evelyn's aunt. Short letters, supervised. "Thank you," Danielle whispered as the guards led her away. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. David and Athena formed a protective barrier while Ken handled the press. "Maya!" one reporter broke through. "How does it feel to be exonerated?" I pulled Evelyn close. "Ask me in a few months. Right now, I just want to take my daughter home." "And where is home now?" another called out. "With me," David said firmly, surprising us all. "For as long as they want." Later that night, after Evelyn had fallen asleep in the guest room of David's apartment, he found me on the balcony. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I thought revenge would feel better," I admitted. "More satisfying." "Maybe because it wasn't really revenge in the end," he said. "It was justice." I leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steadiness I'd always taken for granted. "When did you get so wise?" "Around the same time you stopped being so stubborn," he smiled. "Welcome back to the world, Maya." Inside, Evelyn called out in her sleep. As I went to comfort her, I realized David was right. This wasn't an ending fueled by revenge. It was a beginning built on truth. And maybe, just maybe, that was better. "Mom, do I have to go to school today?" Evelyn stood in David's kitchen, pushing her cereal around the bowl. 2 months had passed since the trial, but some mornings were still harder than others. "What's really bothering you, sweetheart?" "Jamie Thompson told everyone her dad says I come from a family of criminals." She dropped her spoon. She said I'll probably end up in jail too. I knelt beside her chair. Look at me. The actions of Louis and Danielle don't define you. Or me. But the doorbell rang. David answered it, and Athena swept in, elegant as ever. Good morning, my darlings. Evelyn, ready for our special day? I raised an eyebrow. Special day? Grandmother's privilege. Athena winked. I'm taking her out of school. We have a court date. My stomach dropped. What court date? The reading of Harrison's sealed testimony. She held up an official-looking envelope. His wife found it in their safe. He recorded everything before... She glanced at Evelyn. Before the incident. I want to go, Evelyn said firmly. I need to understand. David touched my shoulder. I'll come too. The courthouse was quieter this time. No media circus, just a small conference room where Ken waited with a video set up. Judge Harrison's wife sat in the corner, gray-faced but composed. You don't have to watch this, I told Evelyn. Yes, I do. She gripped my hand. I'm not a baby anymore. The video started. Harrison looked tired, haunted. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. Louis Jackson will have made sure of that. He detailed everything. The bribes, the threats, the systematic corruption that had poisoned the justice system. Then he looked directly at the camera. Maya, I failed you. I knew the evidence was fabricated, but I took the money anyway. My wife was sick, the treatments were expensive. But those are excuses. I destroyed an innocent woman's life. Evelyn's hand tightened in mine. But Louis Jackson's crimes go deeper. He's been working with a human trafficking ring, using his firm to launder their money. The proof is in a storage unit under his wife's maiden name. Unit 247, Riverside Storage. Ken was already on his phone, calling it in. And Danielle, Harrison sighed. She came to me last year, wanted to confess. Louis threatened to kill her if she did. She's as much a victim as she is a perpetrator. The video ended. Mrs. Harrison stood slowly. My husband was a good man who made terrible choices, she said. He paid for them with his life, but he wanted the truth known. An hour later, we watched from Ken's office window as FBI agents raided the storage unit. Box after box of evidence emerged. This is bigger than we thought, Ken said grimly. Louis wasn't just corrupt, he was part of an international criminal organization. My phone buzzed. A text from Danielle's prison account. They're moving me to witness protection. Louis has connections inside. I'm scared. She needs to testify, Ken said, reading over my shoulder. She knows names, dates, everything. Will she be safe? I asked. We'll make sure of it. He paused. Maya, we need you too. Your old case files might contain evidence we missed. Evelyn, who'd been quiet since the video, suddenly spoke up. Mom was the best lawyer ever. She'll help catch all the bad guys. David smiled. She sure will. That evening, back at David's apartment, Evelyn was finally ready to talk. I used to think Daddy was a hero, she said, curled up on the couch between us. That you were the bad guy. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for, I told her. You were just a little girl. I'm not anymore. She sat up straighter. And I want to help. I remember things, conversations, people who came to the house. Maybe it could help catch them. David and I exchanged looks. It could be dangerous, he warned. I'm not afraid. She had my determination in her eyes. They hurt our family. They hurt lots of families. Someone has to stop them. My phone buzzed again. Athena. Board meeting tomorrow. Louis's partners are running scared. Time to take back your firm. What do you say, Mom? Evelyn asked. Can we fight back? Together? I looked at my daughter, seeing not just the little girl I'd lost, but the strong young woman she was becoming. At David, who'd stood by us through everything. At the life we were rebuilding, stronger than before. Together, I agreed. But first, you need to face Jamie Thompson. She grinned. Already handled it. Told her my mom's a hero who fights for justice. Shut her right up. David laughed. That's our girl. As Evelyn headed to bed, she paused in the doorway. Mom, I'm glad you never gave up. On justice? On us. After she left, David pulled me close. You know this isn't over. Lewis's organization will fight back. Let them try. I thought of Harrison's confession, of Danielle's fear, of all the lives destroyed by corruption. We have something they don't. What's that? The truth. And this time we're not letting it stay buried. The law firm's conference room fell silent as I walked in, Athena at my side. 15 partners sat around the mahogany table, faces I'd once known well, now pale with worry. Gentlemen, Athena smiled coldly, I believe you know why we're here. You have no right, Thomas, the managing partner, started. Actually, she does. Alana entered, carrying a stack of files. As majority shareholder, Athena has every right to call this meeting, and as the wrongfully convicted former partner, Maya has every right to be here. You're all implicated, I said, dropping Harrison's files on the table. Every single one of you knew what Lewis was doing. Some of you helped him. That's ridiculous, Patricia, a senior partner, protested. We had no idea. Save it. I slid surveillance photos across the table. You at dinner with known trafficking suspects. You signing documents for shell companies. You depositing unexplained cash into offshore accounts. The door opened again. Ken walked in with 2 FBI agents. Oh God, Thomas whispered. You have a choice, I said. Cooperate now. Tell us everything you know about Lewis's operation or go down with him. They'll kill us, Patricia's voice shook. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Actually, we do. Ken placed a laptop on the table, started a video. This is from an hour ago. The screen showed a warehouse raid. Dozens of arrests, evidence being seized, women being rescued from shipping containers. Your operation is falling apart, Athena said. Lewis talked. Danielle talked. Now it's your turn. My phone buzzed. David. Evelyn safe at school. Extra security in place. Think about your families, I pressed. Your children. Do you want them visiting you in prison? Or worse? Thomas broke first. The Russian connection. It wasn't our idea. Lewis said we just had to look the other way. Looking the way makes you complicit, Ken said, but cooperation might help your sentence. One by one, they started talking. Names, dates, locations poured out. The FBI agents recorded everything. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. The message made my blood freeze. You should have stayed in prison. Now your daughter pays. I showed Ken the message. He immediately called the school. No answer, he said. I was already running for the door when Alana caught my arm. Maya, wait, it's a trap. I don't care. Listen to me. She held up her phone. David just texted. Evelyn's fine. She's with him. Someone pulled the school's fire alarm, but he got her out first. I sagged against the wall, heart pounding. They're desperate, Athena said. This proves we're close. Ken's phone rang. His face turned serious as he listened. Understood. He hung up. Lewis is dead. Found in his cell an hour ago. Suicide? Thomas asked. Made to look like it. Ken's eyes met mine. Just like Harrison. They're cleaning house, Athena realized. Where's Danielle? I demanded. Safe house in Vermont, Ken assured me. But we need to move fast. This organization is collapsing, and they'll try to destroy evidence. My phone buzzed again. David. At your apartment with Evelyn. Something you need to see. Go, Athena said. We'll handle things here. I found David and Evelyn in my living room, staring at an open safe I'd never seen before. It was behind the bookshelf, Evelyn said. I remembered Lewis putting things in it when he thought I was asleep. Inside were more files, USB drives, and a handwritten letter from Lewis. Maya, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. I knew they'd kill me eventually. Everything you need is here. Names of corrupt judges, politicians, business leaders, the whole network. I'm sorry for what I did to you, to us. Keep Evelyn safe. They'll never stop coming. The only way out is to expose everything. L. He knew, David said quietly. He knew they'd turn on him. Mom? Evelyn touched my arm. What do we do now? Before I could answer, Ken called. Maya, turn on the news. The TV flickered to life. Breaking news banner. Major human trafficking ring exposed. Multiple arrests across 5 countries. It's happening, Ken said. The whole thing's unraveling. But watch your back. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. I looked at Evelyn, so brave and strong. At David, steady and true. At the evidence that could finally end this nightmare. We finish this, I said. Not for revenge anymore. For justice. Together, Evelyn said firmly. David took my hand. Always. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The city was waking up to a new reality, one where the powerful weren't untouchable anymore. And somewhere in the chaos, truth was finally breaking free. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I walked up them, Evelyn's hand in mine, David and Athena flanking us. This time, I wasn't here as a defendant or a victim. I was here to testify. Ready? Ken met us at the doors. Tell me again who's on trial today, Evelyn asked. 3 judges, 2 senators, and 4 corporate executives, Ken replied. All part of Lewis's network. Inside, Danielle waited in the witness room, looking different in her witness protection makeover. Maya? She hugged Evelyn, then stepped back. They're saying there are still people out there, people we missed. That's why we're here, I said, to finish this. The courtroom was packed. As I took the stand, I saw familiar faces in the gallery, partners from the firm, their families, victims of the trafficking ring. Even Mrs. Harrison sat there, nodding encouragingly. Ms. Jackson, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about the evidence you found in Lewis Jackson's hidden safe. I detailed everything. The money trails, the blackmail, the complex web of corruption that had ensnared so many lives. As I spoke, one of the defendants, Judge Reynolds, started whispering urgently to his lawyer. Your Honor, Reynolds' attorney stood, my client wishes to make a statement. The judge nodded. Reynolds approached the stand. There's a shipping container, he said quietly. Arriving tonight. Pier 17. More girls. I can't live with this anymore. The courtroom erupted. Ken was already on his phone, mobilizing teams. Court is adjourned until tomorrow, the judge announced over the chaos. Outside, Athena grabbed my arm. Maya, look. A black SUV was idling across the street. The window rolled down, revealing a face I recognized from Lewis's files. Victor, the trafficking ring's enforcer. Get Evelyn out of here, I told David. Mom, no, Evelyn protested. Go with David, please. As they retreated inside, Victor stepped out of the SUV. Ms. Jackson, we should talk. Nothing to talk about. There's always something, he smiled coldly. Your daughter is very pretty. My blood froze, but before I could respond, police cars surrounded the SUV. Ken emerged from the courthouse, weapon drawn. Victor Petrov, he called. You're under arrest. Victor reached into his jacket. Multiple shots rang out. He fell, gun clattering away unfired. Mom! Evelyn ran back outside, David close behind. I'm okay, I assured her. It's over. But it wasn't quite over. That night, we gathered in Ken's office, watching live feeds from Pier 17. SWAT teams moved in, freeing 37 women and arresting a dozen traffickers. They're singing like birds, Ken reported, giving up everyone involved. Danielle, who'd been quiet all day, finally spoke. I keep thinking about how it all started, how my jealousy of you led to all this. You helped end it, I reminded her. That counts for something. Maya. Athena entered holding papers. The firm's board voted. They want you back as managing partner. I looked at David, saw the question in his eyes. No, I said. I have a different idea. The next morning, I stood before the firm's remaining partners. We're converting the firm into a nonprofit, dedicated to helping trafficking victims, fighting corruption, providing pro bono services to those who need it most. Can we do that? Patricia asked. With Athena's backing and my leadership? Yes. I'm in, Alana said immediately. One by one, they all agreed. Later, at David's apartment, our apartment now, Evelyn worked on homework while David cooked dinner. Mom, she called, my essay topic is what justice means. Can I write about you? Write about all of us, I said. About how truth always finds a way. About how love is stronger than hate. About family, David added, bringing plates to the table. The ones we're born with and the ones we choose. My phone buzzed. Ken. Last defendant pleaded guilty. It's really over. Mom? Evelyn asked. Are you crying? Happy tears, I assured her. Just happy tears. The doorbell rang. Athena entered with Danielle, who looked nervous. I'm leaving for my new life tomorrow, she said, but I wanted to say goodbye properly. Evelyn hugged her aunt. Will we ever see you again? Someday, I said, surprising myself. When it's safe. I don't deserve forgiveness, Danielle whispered. Maybe not, but you deserve a chance to be better. We all do. As we sat down to dinner, this strange, broken, healing family, I thought about justice and revenge, about truth and redemption, about how sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. To new beginnings, David proposed. To family, Athena added. To justice, Evelyn said firmly. I looked around the table at all these faces I loved and raised my glass. To all of it, every messy, beautiful piece. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one a reminder that even in the darkest places, light finds a way to shine through. The crystal champagne flute shattered in my grip, sending shards and expensive bubbles across the mahogany dining table. The room fell silent, except for my mother's sharp intake of breath. I didn't care. After what my sister Stella had just said, breaking things seemed like the reasonable response. I'm Carmen, and this was the moment I decided to burn my family's perfect facade to the ground. Really, Carmen? Stella dabbed her napkin at the splash of champagne on her designer blouse. Having another tantrum because you can't handle criticism? This is exactly why your business failed. My business didn't fail, I shot back, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. We had a setback. It happens to every entrepreneur. Sweetheart, my mother Francesca interrupted, her perfectly manicured hands smoothing the tablecloth. Perhaps it's time to consider a more conventional career path. Your sister Tamara could help you secure a position at her firm. Tamara's lips curled into that familiar smirk. Entry level, of course, though even that might be a stretch given your limited experience. Limited experience? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I built that company from nothing. We had over 50,000 customers before you lost everyone's money, my brother Jason chimed in, not bothering to look up from his phone. Face it, sis. You're not cut out for the big leagues. I glanced at my father, Lincoln, hoping for support, but he just sipped his wine, eyes fixed on his plate. Typical. He'd perfected the art of avoiding conflict years ago. You know what? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I don't need this. Any of it. I don't need your fake concern or your condescending advice. Carmen, sit down, my mother hissed. The staff will talk. Let them talk. God forbid anyone discovers the Ortiz family isn't perfect. I grabbed my purse from the back of my chair. I'm done pretending we're one big happy family. Drama queen, Stella muttered. I spun toward her. At least I earned my success instead of riding Daddy's coattails into law school. Stella's face reddened. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? I looked around the table, meeting each of their eyes. That's what none of you can handle, isn't it? The truth? From the corner of my eye, I caught movement. My niece Willow had slipped into the doorway, her phone held low but definitely recording. Smart girl. She gave me the smallest of nods. The truth, Tamara scoffed, is that you're jealous. You've always been jealous of our success. Success? I laughed again, harder this time. You mean the trust funds, the connections, the carefully curated marriages and careers? That's not success. That's inheritance. Carmen, my mother stood now too, her voice shrill. You will not speak to your sisters this way. Watch me. I stepped away from the table. You all sit here in your bubble, judging everyone else, thinking you're untouchable. But you're not. You're just better at hiding your mistakes than most people. Jason finally looked up from his phone. Is that a threat? No, dear brother, that's a promise. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Stella, maybe next time you want to criticize someone's business acumen, Make sure they don't know about your creative billing practices first. The color drained from Stella's face. Perfect. Carmen, wait, my father finally spoke, but I was already walking away. Don't bother calling, I called over my shoulder. I'll be too busy picking up the pieces of my failed business to answer. I made it to my car before the tears came. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, but I forced myself to breathe. They'd always been like this, dismissive, cruel, wrapped up in their own importance. But something was different now. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was just years of pent-up resentment, but I'd finally had enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Willow. Got it all on video. Also, I have an idea. Coffee tomorrow? I smiled through my tears. My teenage niece, the only one in this family worth saving. She'd always been different, smarter, kinder, more genuine than the rest of them. Another text came through, this time from my mother. Your behavior tonight was unacceptable. Call me when you're ready to apologize. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked her number, and Stella's, and Tamara's, and Jason's. As I drove away from the mansion that had never felt like home, my mind was already racing with possibilities. They thought I was finished, that I'd crawl back begging for forgiveness and a job at one of their precious firms. They had no idea what I was capable of, no idea what secrets I'd kept over the years, what stories I could tell. My business might have hit a rough patch, but I still had my skills from my investigative journalism days, and now I had nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed again. Willow. Trust me, you're gonna want to hear this idea. I smiled. Maybe it was time to put those skills to use. After all, every good story needs an audience, and I had one hell of a story to tell. A podcast? I stared at Willow across the coffee shop table. That's your big idea? Not just any podcast. My niece's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard. True crime is oversaturated. Family drama? That's the sweet spot right now, especially when it involves rich people behaving badly. I stirred my now cold coffee. And you think people want to hear about our family? Are you kidding? Willow's eyes lit up. Mom's creative accounting, Uncle Jason's business trips to Vegas, the stuff about Grandpa's company that nobody talks about. It's gold, Aunt Carmen. Pure gold. I don't know. But I did know. The idea had been forming since last night, taking shape with every angry text I'd received from my siblings. Look. Willow turned her laptop around. I already mocked up some artwork. Family secrets, the truth behind the perfect facade. What do you think? The design was sleek, professional, black and gold with a shattered family portrait as the centerpiece. My throat tightened. When did you get so good at this? While everyone else was busy criticizing you, I was actually learning from you. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You taught me that success isn't about who your parents are. It's about what you create. Your mother would kill me if she knew you were helping with this. Mom's too busy cooking books to notice what I'm doing. Willow's voice hardened. Besides, I'm tired of pretending everything's fine, aren't you? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another message from my father. Your mother's upset, call her. I showed it to Willow, who rolled her eyes. Classic Grandpa, never addressing the actual problem. You know what? I straightened in my chair. Let's do it. The podcast. All of it. Really? Willow's face lit up. Really? But we do this right. Professional equipment, proper research, ironclad legal protection. I pulled out my notebook. Old habits die hard. I still have contacts from my journalism days, people who owe me favors. I can handle the technical side, Willow said, already typing. Sound editing, website, social media presence. I've been studying this stuff for months. Months? How long have you been planning this? She shrugged. Since I overheard Mom and Aunt Stella talking about how they got rid of their competition in the Martinez case. You know, the one where that family lost everything? My pen froze mid-sentence. What are you talking about? Oh, you didn't know? Willow's voice dropped. They fabricated evidence, got the whole family's assets frozen. The youngest daughter... She swallowed hard. She couldn't afford her medical treatments anymore. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. That girl died? Willow nodded. Last spring, Mom and Aunt Stella celebrated with champagne, called it a necessary casualty of business. My hands were shaking again, but not from anger this time, from purpose. Tell me everything. For the next hour, Willow laid it all out. The corruption, the cover-ups, the casual cruelty that my family had turned into an art form. With each revelation, my resolve strengthened. We'll need to be careful, I said finally. They'll try to shut us down. Already thought of that. Willow pulled up another document. Anonymous hosting, encrypted communications, offshore servers. They can try to trace it, but they won't get far. When did you get so devious? She grinned. I learned from the best. Our family's great at being devious. We're just going to use it for good instead of evil. My phone buzzed again. Tamara this time. Somehow texting despite being blocked. Mom's having anxiety attacks because of you. Hope you're happy with yourself. I showed Willow the message, her jaw set. They always do this. Make you feel guilty for their actions. Not anymore. No, I agreed. Not anymore. I pulled out my credit card. First things first, we need equipment. Then we need a secure place to record. My friend's dad has a music studio. He owes me for fixing his website. We can use it after hours. I raised an eyebrow. Does he know what we're planning to use it for? He knows it's a podcast about family dynamics. He doesn't need to know whose family. She closed her laptop. When do we start? I checked my watch. The equipment store closes in 2 hours. We can have our first test recording done by tonight. Perfect! Willow stood, gathering her things. Oh, and one more thing. I may have already started a social media campaign. Just subtle hints about a big exposé coming soon. We've got 5,000 followers already. I laughed despite myself. You really have been planning this. Someone had to. Her expression turned serious. They hurt people, Aunt Carmen. Real people. It's time someone held them accountable. As we walked to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about truth, about showing my family that their actions had consequences. You know there's no going back once we do this, I said, as we pulled out of the parking lot. Willow plugged her phone into the car's speakers, pulling up a playlist titled Podcast Themes. Good, she said. Going back is overrated anyway. The first track started playing, a haunting piano piece that built slowly into something powerful, something unstoppable, just like us. 3, 2, 1. Willow gave me the signal from behind the soundboard. I leaned into the microphone, my heart pounding. Welcome to Family Secrets, where the perfect facade crumbles one truth at a time. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a story about power, privilege, and what happens when justice is for sale. My hands trembled as I shuffled my notes, but my voice remained steady. Years of investigative reporting had taught me how to mask nervousness with authority. Let me tell you about a lawyer named Stella. Harvard-educated, respected partner at a prestigious firm, known for never losing a case. But what if I told you her perfect record wasn't built on skill, but on something far darker? I detailed the Martinez case, careful to change just enough details to avoid legal issues while keeping the devastating truth intact. As I spoke, the subscriber count on our live feed kept climbing. 1,000 listeners, Willow mouthed silently, giving me a thumbs up. But here's where it gets interesting, I continued. When the Martinez family's assets were frozen, something unusual happened in Stella's offshore account. A transfer of exactly $2 million from an anonymous source. The same day, key evidence in the case mysteriously disappeared from the court records. My phone started buzzing. Stella. I ignored it. 2,000 listeners, Willow whispered. The youngest daughter needed experimental treatment for a rare form of cancer, treatment that could have saved her life, treatment they could no longer afford after Stella's legal maneuvering left them penniless. More calls. Tamara now, Jason, my mother. 5,000 listeners. I pressed on, my voice growing stronger with each revelation. But Stella didn't act alone. Her partner in this tragedy was another powerful woman. Let's call her T. Together, they orchestrated one of the most devastating legal frauds this city has ever seen, and they celebrated their victory with champagne while a young girl died fighting for her life. The studio door burst open. Stella stood there, face contorted with rage, designer heels clicking on the floor as she stormed toward me. "Stop recording right now!" she demanded. I smiled into the microphone. "And speaking of Stella, it seems she's decided to join us live. Care to comment on the Martinez case, sister?" "You have no proof of any of this," she snarled, reaching for the microphone. Willow's hand shot out, blocking her aunt's grasp. "Touch the equipment and I'll add destruction of property to the live stream." 10,000 listeners, I said calmly. "That's quite an audience for your debut, Stella. Want to tell them about the offshore account? Or should I share the documentation I have right here?" Stella's face went from red to white. "You're lying. You can't have those records." I pulled out a folder, spreading photographs across the desk. Banking statements, court documents, emails. Amazing what people keep in their cloud storage when they think nobody's looking. 20,000 listeners! Willow's voice was excited now. Stella grabbed my arm. "You're destroying this family!" I yanked free. "No, you destroyed this family when you decided money was worth more than human life." "You don't understand," she hissed. "That case was everything. If you hadn't won, a young girl might still be alive." I turned back to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems my sister has some explaining to do. Stella, the audience is waiting. Care to tell them why $2 million was worth more than a child's life?" She backed away, fumbling for her phone. "Our lawyers will shut you down. You'll never work in this city again." 30,000 listeners, Willow announced, and the recording's already been downloaded thousands of times. "It's too late, Mom." Stella spun toward her daughter. You? You helped her do this?" "Someone had to tell the truth," Willow said quietly. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "I worked on the Martinez case. There's more, much more. Check your email." "Well, folks," I said into the microphone, "it seems we've struck a nerve, and this is just the beginning. Next week, we'll dive deeper into the web of corruption that connects some of our city's most prestigious law firms and financial institutions. The truth is coming out, one episode at a time." Stella stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Through the studio window, I could see her crying in her car, phone pressed to her ear. 40,000 listeners, Willow said as I wrapped up the episode. And trending on Twitter. "Family Secrets is blowing up." My hands were shaking as I removed my headphones. "You okay? That was your mom we just exposed." Willow's eyes were hard. "That woman stopped being my mom the day she toasted to winning the Martinez case." I heard her, Aunt Carmen. She laughed about it. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. Social media exploding. News outlets requesting interviews. More anonymous sources coming forward. "We should probably get out of here," I said, gathering my evidence files. "They'll be coming for us now." Willow was already packing up the equipment. "Let them come. We have the truth on our side." As we left the studio, my phone lit up with one final message, from Tamara. "You think you know everything? Wait until you hear what I know about our dear brother Jason. Call me." I showed the message to Willow, who grinned. "Looks like we've got our next episode." The truth was snowballing now, and there was no stopping it. Not anymore. "You're meeting Tamara?" Willow nearly dropped her laptop. "It's obviously a trap." I checked my reflection in the cafe window. Of course it's a trap, but she's desperate enough to give us something real. The coffee shop was crowded, perfect for a confrontation. I'd chosen it specifically because Tamara wouldn't dare make a scene in front of so many smartphones. 100,000 subscribers now, Willow said, setting up her hidden recording equipment. "The Martinez story is everywhere. 3 news stations called this morning." I spotted Tamara entering, her designer suit a stark contrast to my casual attire. Her eyes darted around nervously before she slid into the seat across from me. "You look terrible," I said cheerfully. "Our father's in the hospital." She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Stress-induced heart problems. I hope you're happy." "Nice try. I called the hospital. He's getting his annual physical." Tamara's facade cracked slightly. You always were thorough. Speaking of thorough, I pulled out my phone. Let's talk about what you know about Jason. Not here. She glanced around. This isn't a game, Carmen. What you're doing, it's dangerous. More dangerous than letting a girl die for profit? That was different. Stella went too far. And you didn't? I leaned forward. The offshore accounts? The insider trading? The creative bookkeeping that made millions disappear? Her face paled. How did you? I have sources everywhere now. Amazing how many people want to talk when they see someone finally standing up to the mighty Tamara. She grabbed my wrist. Listen to me, Jason. He's involved with people. Bad people. The kind who don't care about podcasts or public opinion. They solve problems permanently. I pulled free. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Her voice dropped. Last month, a journalist started asking questions about Jason's Vegas connections. 2 days later, his brake lines mysteriously failed. My coffee turned sour in my stomach, but I kept my voice steady. Prove it. Tamara pulled out a USB drive. Everything's here. Bank records, photos, names. But if you use this, I was never involved. Why are you giving me this? Because. She stood up, straightening her jacket. Unlike Stella, I know when I'm beaten. And because... She hesitated. Because maybe that Martinez girl deserves some justice. After she left, Willow emerged from her corner table. Got everything recorded, including her confession about the journalist. I turned the USB drive over in my hands. We need to be careful with this one. Back everything up. Multiple locations. Already on it? Willow was typing furiously. But you should see what's trending now. Someone leaked photos of Stella, shredding documents at her office last night. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made my heart stop. Prominent law firm under investigation following podcast allegations. It's working, Willow whispered. They're actually looking into it. Another message popped up, this one from Jason. You have no idea what you're getting into. Back off now, or else. Or else what? I muttered. Aunt Carmen? Willow's voice was small. Maybe we should be careful. What Tamara said about that journalist. No. I stood up, gathering my things. That's what they want. For us to be scared. To back down. But we're not stopping until the truth is out. We spent the next 3 hours in a private room at the library, going through the USB contents. What we found made the Martinez case look like a parking ticket. Money laundering, Willow read. Connections to organized crime, blackmail. Uncle Jason's been busy. Look at these dates. I pointed to a series of transactions. Each one corresponds to a major family event. The Christmas party where he announced his new business venture. The charity gala where he donated $500,000. All dirty money, Willow finished. But how do we prove it without putting ourselves in danger? I smiled. By letting someone else do it for us. Opening my email, I started composing a message to every financial crimes investigator I knew from my reporting days. Anonymous tip with evidence attached. They'll have to investigate. And the podcast? We tell just enough to make people ask questions. The right questions. I checked my watch. We record tonight. This episode goes live tomorrow morning. Willow's phone chimed. Grandma's calling a family emergency meeting. Tomorrow night at the house. Perfect timing. I gathered the printouts. Let them hear the episode first. Let them sweat. What if Uncle Jason really does try something? I pulled up the photo of the Martinez girl. Young, smiling, full of life before my family destroyed her. Then we make sure everyone knows exactly who's responsible if anything happens to us. As we left the library, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up alongside us. The window rolled down just enough to show Jason's face. Last chance, sis, he called out. Some stories should stay buried. I held up my phone, recording. Thanks for that, Jason. It'll make a great opening for tomorrow's episode. The SUV peeled away, leaving rubber on the pavement. He's scared, Willow observed. Good. I checked my phone. 200,000 subscribers now. He should be. The truth was like an avalanche now, growing bigger and more unstoppable with each revelation. and my family was directly in its path. The family mansion looked different now, smaller somehow. Police cars lined the circular driveway, their lights reflecting off the marble fountain. "Holy shit," Willow whispered beside me. "They actually did it. They arrested Uncle Jason." We watched from my parked car as two officers led my brother out in handcuffs. His perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. He caught sight of us and mouthed something that looked distinctly like a threat. "500,000 downloads of today's episode," Willow said, checking her phone. "The FBI's financial crimes tip line crashed from too many calls." My mother burst out of the front door, mascara streaking her face. "This is your fault," she screamed, pointing at my car. "You've destroyed this family." I stepped out, facing her. "No, Mother, the family destroyed itself. I just exposed the rot." "They're taking everything," she sobbed. "The accounts, the properties, all of it. We'll be ruined." "Like the Martinez family was ruined?" I moved closer. "Like all the other families you and your precious children destroyed?" A detective approached us, notepad in hand. "Ms. Carmen, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your brother's activities." "Of course, Detective. But first..." I pulled out my phone, showing him a series of emails. "You might want to look into my father's company, specifically the overseas subsidiaries." My mother's face went chalk white. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." I turned to the detective. "I have evidence of systematic tax fraud going back 20 years. Would you like to see it?" "Carmen, please." My mother grabbed my arm. "Your father. It would kill him." "Like it killed Mr. Martinez when he lost everything? When he had to watch his daughter die because he couldn't afford her treatment?" More police cars arrived. I could see my father through the study window, frantically shredding documents. "Too late," I told him, though he couldn't hear me. "Willow already hacked your cloud storage. They have everything." Stella's car screeched into the driveway, nearly hitting a police cruiser. She jumped out, waving a court order. "This is harassment. We're filing an injunction to stop this podcast immediately." "Already denied," Willow called out, waving her phone. "Check your email. The judge ruled it's protected speech, since everything we said is demonstrably true." "You little..." Stella started toward her daughter, but two officers stepped between them. "Miss Stella?" One officer held up a warrant. "We need to discuss the Martinez case, specifically the missing evidence and suspicious financial transactions." My sister's legal mask slipped into place. "I want my lawyer present for any questions." "Your lawyer's already been arrested," the officer replied. He was very cooperative. I watched as my family's carefully constructed world crumbled around them. Tamara arrived next, already in tears, clutching designer bags stuffed with what looked like documents. "I'll tell you everything," she announced to the nearest detective. "About Jason, about the money, about all of it. I want immunity." "Traitor!" Stella screamed at her. "Smart," I corrected. "She's the only one who might stay out of jail." My father finally emerged from the house, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Carmen," he said quietly. "A moment?" I followed him to the garden, our old special place, where he used to read to me as a child, before money and power corrupted everything. "I never wanted this," he said, sitting heavily on a stone bench. "The company. It started with small compromises, then bigger ones, until one day you were celebrating the death of an innocent girl with champagne?" He flinched. "I tried to protect you from all this. That's why I encouraged you to start your own business, to stay away from the family companies. You weren't protecting me, I realized. You were protecting yourself, keeping me clean in case everything fell apart." "Carmen!" My mother's shrill voice cut through the garden. "They're seizing the house. Do something." I stood up. "I already did something, Mother. I told the truth." Willow appeared at my side, tablet in hand. "Trending nationwide now. Every major news network is covering it. And..." She paused for effect. "3 publishing houses want to talk about a book deal." My father put his head in his hands. Behind him, I could see Stella being led to a police car, still arguing about her rights. Tamara was sitting in the back of an SUV, talking rapidly to federal agents. Jason had already been taken away. "What happens now?" Willow asked quietly. I watched as officers strung crime scene tape across the front of my childhood home. Now we keep telling the truth about everyone who helped cover this up. Every corrupt judge, every bought politician, every complicit accountant. "They'll fight back," my father warned. "People with real power, dangerous people. Let them." I took Willow's hand. "The truth is bulletproof." My mother's wails echoed across the property as agents began carrying out boxes of documents. The fountain's water still sparkled in the evening light, but now it seemed to be washing away years of secrets and lies. My phone buzzed, a message from Mrs. Martinez. "Thank you for giving my daughter justice, and that made everything worth it. You need to see this." Willow burst into my apartment, laptop clutched to her chest. Her face was pale, hands shaking. "What's wrong?" I set down my coffee, still groggy from another late night of recording. She opened her laptop, pulling up a series of encrypted emails. "Someone sent these to our tip line. They're from Grandpa's private server." I scanned the first few messages, my blood running cold. "These dates? They're from 30 years ago." "Keep reading." The emails detailed a conspiracy so vast it made our previous revelations look like child's play. My father, the respected businessman, had built his empire on the backs of desperate families. Predatory loans, forged documents, manufactured bankruptcies, all designed to strip people of their homes and businesses during the economic crash of the early 90s. "There's more," Willow whispered, scrolling down. "Look at the names." I recognized one immediately, Maria Santos, my childhood best friend. Her family had lost everything when I was 12. They'd disappeared overnight, and my parents had told me they moved away for better opportunities. "They didn't move," I breathed. "They were driven out." My phone rang, my father's number. After 3 weeks of silence, now he calls. "Hello, Father. Where are you?" His voice was urgent, strained. "We need to talk. In person. Now." "Why? More families you've destroyed coming to light?" "Carmen, please." He actually sounded scared. "There are things you don't understand, things I've done to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed bitterly. "Like you protected Maria's family?" The line went silent for a moment. "How do you know about Maria?" "I know everything, Father. The loans, the foreclosures, the fake bankruptcy claims. All of it. Meet me at the old boathouse. 1 hour. Come alone." He hung up. Willow grabbed my arm. "You can't go alone. What if it's a trap?" "It's not." I gathered my recording equipment. "He's scared, and I want to know why." The boathouse sat on the edge of the lake where I'd learned to swim. It looked smaller now, weathered by time and neglect. My father waited inside, sitting on an old wooden chair. "You're recording this, aren't you?" he asked as I entered. I held up my microphone. "Always." "Good." He pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Then record this too. The whole truth, finally." The envelope contained photographs, documents, and a handwritten confession. My father's hands trembled as he spread them out. "I didn't start this," he said quietly. "I inherited it, from my father, who inherited it from his. A system designed to keep certain families in power, others in poverty. I thought I could change it from the inside, make it better somehow." "But you didn't," I said. "You made it worse." "Yes." He looked at me directly. "And then you were born. I saw how different you were, honest, principled, strong. I knew you could never be part of this. So I pushed you away from the family business, encouraged your journalism, your independence, while still destroying other people's lives." The system was bigger than me by then. Powerful people, old money families. They don't let go easily. When you started your business, they wanted to corrupt you too. The online company's failure wasn't an accident. My heart stopped. "What?" "They sabotaged you, because you wouldn't play by their rules." He handed me another document. "Here's the proof. Names, dates, everything." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because they're coming for you next." He stood up, pacing. "The podcast, the exposures, You're disrupting decades of carefully maintained power structures. They won't allow it. A car door slammed outside, then another. They followed me, my father whispered. I'm sorry. I thought I had more time. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Multiple sets. The evidence, I said quickly, gathering the papers. Is there more? Hidden safe in my study. Behind the painting of the lake. Combination is your birthday. He pushed me toward the back door. Go, now. Tell the whole story. Dad, go. He shoved the manila envelope into my hands. I'll hold them off. Make it right, Carmen. All of it. I slipped out the back, just as the front door burst open. Through the weathered walls, I heard my father's voice, strong and clear. Gentlemen, I've been expecting you. Running through the woods, clutching the evidence to my chest, I called Willow. Get out of the apartment, I gasped. Get somewhere safe, and send that encrypted email dump to every news outlet we know. Now. What about you? I'm going to the house, to the study. There's more evidence. The police? No time. Just do it. And Willow? I paused, catching my breath. Thank you for everything. I could hear shouting from the boathouse now, car engines starting. The truth wasn't just dangerous anymore, it was deadly. But I had come too far to stop now. My father had finally chosen a side. Now it was my turn to finish what he started. The whole system was about to come crashing down. And this time, the right people would be buried in the rubble. The house alarm didn't sound when I broke in through the kitchen window. Of course not. I still knew the code from childhood. Some things never change. My father's study was exactly as I remembered. Leather-bound books, expensive artwork, the familiar painting of the lake hanging above his desk. I could hear voices downstairs, security guards making their rounds. The safe clicked open on the first try. My birthday, just like he said. Hands where I can see them. I froze. My mother stood in the doorway, holding what looked like my father's antique revolver. Really, Mother? You're going to shoot me? You've ruined everything. Her voice shook. The accounts are frozen. The house is under surveillance. Your father's probably dead because of you. I turned slowly, documents clutched to my chest. He chose to tell the truth. Finally. The truth? She laughed hysterically. The truth is that we protected you, all of you. Do you know what these people do to threats? Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Put the gun down, I said quietly. Help me expose them, all of them. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Maybe regret, maybe fear. Then her expression hardened. Mrs. Ortiz? A man's voice called from the hallway. We heard voices. In here, she shouted. She's in here. I dove behind the desk as two men in dark suits burst in. Not security guards. Something much worse. The documents, one demanded. Hand them over. Already uploaded, I lied, buying time. Every major news outlet has them. She's bluffing, my mother said. Check her phone. I grabbed the heavy brass paperweight from the desk and hurled it at the overhead light. The room plunged into darkness. Chaos erupted. My mother screamed. The men cursed. I rolled toward the window, clutching the safe's contents. A gunshot cracked. Plaster exploded near my head. The window was already open from my earlier escape plan. I didn't hesitate. 3 stories up, but the old oak tree was right where it had always been. My childhood escape route. Branches whipped past as I half climbed, half fell. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Willow. They're coming, she said when I answered, running across the lawn. Police, FBI, everyone. The email dump went live. It's everywhere. Meet me at the backup location, I gasped. Bring everything. More shots rang out, car engines roared to life. I sprinted through the garden, past the fountain where this had all started. My mother's voice echoed behind me. You're just like your father, too stubborn to know when to stop. Maybe she was right. The emergency studio we'd set up in an abandoned radio station was still secure. Willow was already there, equipment running. You're bleeding, she said as I burst in. Just scratches. I spread the documents across the table. We need to go live. Now. Already streaming, 500,000 viewers waiting. I collapsed into the chair, pulling the microphone close. This is Carmen, and you're listening to the final episode of Family Secrets. Tonight, we're going to tell you the real story, the one they've killed to keep hidden. My phone lit up with messages. Stella, from prison. Don't do this. Tamara. They'll kill us all. Jason. You stupid bitch. I ignored them all. 30 years ago, a group of powerful families created a system designed to maintain their wealth and power at any cost. They called it economic restructuring. In reality, it was organized theft on a massive scale. Police sirens wailed in the distance. My father was part of it. So was my mother. So were dozens of other respected business leaders and politicians. Tonight, I'm going to name every single one of them. Willow's eyes went wide as she read through the documents. Aunt Carmen, these go all the way to the governor's office. Good. I took a deep breath. Because here's the truth about power. It only works when people are afraid, and I'm not afraid anymore. The studio door burst open, but instead of dark-suited men with guns, FBI agents poured in, led by a familiar face, Maria Santos, now wearing a federal badge. Keep broadcasting, she said, smiling. We've got you covered. For the next hour, I laid it all out. Every name, every crime, every life destroyed by greed and corruption. The viewer count hit 1 million, then 2. My mother was arrested trying to flee the country. My father was found at the boathouse, injured but alive. The men who'd chased me were in custody. This isn't just my family's story, I said finally, voice raw from talking. It's the story of every family destroyed by greed, every life ruined by corruption, every truth buried by power. But not anymore. Willow touched my arm, showing me her phone. The story was everywhere. Arrests were being made across the city. The whole corrupt system was crumbling. So what now? She asked as I finally fell silent. I looked at Maria, who nodded encouragingly. Now, I smiled. Now we start rebuilding. The right way this time. The red recording light blinked off for the last time. But the truth? The truth was just getting started. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I made my way inside. My testimony today would be the final piece in a prosecution that had shaken the city to its core. Ready? Maria touched my arm as we approached the courtroom. Born ready. I straightened my jacket. How many are pleading guilty? 17 so far, including your sister Stella. She checked her notes. Tamara's testimony helped crack the bigger cases. Jason's still fighting, but with the evidence we found in those safe documents. The heavy doors opened. The courtroom was packed, but my eyes went straight to the familiar faces. My mother, hollow-eyed in designer clothes that couldn't hide her defeat. My father, looking smaller somehow in his orange jumpsuit, but meeting my gaze steadily. The prosecution calls Carmen to the stand. Walking to the witness box, I passed Willow sitting with her new guardian, my Aunt Patricia, the only family member who'd stayed clean through everything. They both gave me encouraging smiles. Please state your name for the record. Carmen Ortiz. Ms. Ortiz, please tell the court how you first discovered the systematic corruption within your family's business dealings. I leaned into the microphone. It started with a podcast. For the next hour, I laid out everything. The Martinez case, the foreclosure scheme, the decades of corruption that had destroyed countless lives. This time, though, it wasn't for listeners or viewers. It was for justice. And your father's confession at the boathouse, was that coerced in any way? No. I looked at him directly. He chose to tell the truth. Finally. My father nodded slightly, and for the first time since this all began, I felt something like forgiveness stir in my heart. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. Isn't it true that your podcast was motivated by revenge after your family criticized your failed business venture? My business didn't fail, I corrected him. It was sabotaged. By the same people who destroyed the Martinez family, and countless others. The podcast wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The truth? My mother's voice rang out suddenly. The truth is you destroyed this family. Order? The judge banged his gavel. No, Mother. I kept my voice steady. The family destroyed itself. I just turned on the lights. After court adjourned, Maria caught up with me in the hallway. The governor's office called. They want to create an anti-corruption task force. They want you to head it. I laughed. Me? The podcast girl? The journalist who exposed the biggest corruption scandal in state history, she corrected. The woman who proved that truth still matters. Willow appeared, tablet in hand. The documentary makers are here, and 3 more publishers want to talk about the book. Tell them all the same thing, I said. Any proceeds go to the Victims Fund, starting with the Martinez family. Outside, the media circus waited. But among the reporters, I spotted familiar faces. Families who'd lost everything to my father's schemes. People who'd been silenced for decades. They weren't here for interviews. They were here for closure. My father was led past in handcuffs, pausing briefly beside me. I'm proud of you, he said quietly, for being stronger than I ever was. I learned something from you after all, I replied. How not to live. Stella was next, her lawyer's confidence replaced by genuine remorse. The Martinez girl, she whispered. I see her face every night. Good, I said. Remember it when you're rebuilding your life. Do better this time. My phone buzzed. A message from Tamara in witness protection. They're letting me teach accounting to at-risk youth, trying to use what I know for good this time. Ms. Carmen, a young reporter pushed forward. What's next for you? I looked at Willow, who'd shown more integrity at 15 than my entire family had in generations. At Maria, who'd turned her family's tragedy into a force for justice. At the victims' families, finally seeing justice served. What's next? I smiled. We keep telling stories, the ones that need to be told, the ones that change things. And the podcast? Someone called out. Family Secrets is done, I said. But the truth? The truth is just getting started. Later that evening, I stood in front of my old family home, now being converted into a community center for financial literacy and legal aid. The fountain still sparkled in the sunset, but now it seemed to be washing away the past, making room for something new. Ready to go? Willow asked, carrying the last box of recording equipment. Almost. I touched the familiar marble, remembering the night this all began. The broken champagne glass, the cruel words. The moment I decided enough was enough. Sometimes the truth costs you everything you thought you wanted, only to give you everything you actually needed. Okay, I said, turning away from the fountain. Let's go make some good trouble. Behind us, the sun set on the old world of power and secrets. Ahead lay something better, a world built on truth, justice, and the courage to fight for both. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a true one, and that made all the difference.
The notification from HR popped up on my screen, and I could barely contain my smile. After 6 years of grinding, staying late, and being everyone's go-to problem solver, I'd finally landed the senior manager position. My first thought wasn't about celebrating. It was about how I could break the news to my family without them turning it into another drama. My name is Laura, and I'm the human glue holding the Evans family together, or their personal servant, depending on how you look at it. Laura! My mother's shrill voice pierced through my bedroom wall. The washing machine is making that noise again. I minimized the congratulatory email and sighed. Coming, Mom. The washing machine wasn't actually broken. She just hadn't bothered to learn how to use it properly. Just like she hadn't bothered to learn how to use the dishwasher, the coffee maker, or basically anything else in the house that required reading instructions. Oh, good, you're here, she said as I walked into the laundry room. While you're at it, could you do Randy's shirts too? He has that important presentation tomorrow. Randy, my 32-year-old brother who somehow never learned to do his own laundry. Mom, I have work to finish. It'll only take a minute. You know how important this is for him. Everything was always important for Randy, or essential for Natasha, or crucial for Dad's image at the country club. But my things? They were always just inconveniences. I fixed the washing machine settings and headed back to my room, only to find 3 texts from Natasha asking me to proofread her college essay. Again. The same essay I'd already reviewed twice this week. My phone buzzed with a call from Kayla, my best friend and the only person who truly understood my situation. Please tell me you got it, she said before I could even say hello. I did. Girl, I can hear you not celebrating. What's wrong? I closed my bedroom door and lowered my voice. I'm looking at apartments. Finally, where? Downtown, near the office. There's this gorgeous one-bedroom with a balcony, and a knock at my door cut me off. Laura? It was Dad. The printer's not working, and I need these contracts for tomorrow. I covered the phone. Did you check if it's out of paper? Just come fix it, please. You know I'm not good with these things. Kayla was still on the line. Girl, I heard that. You need to tell them. Today. She was right. I'd been putting it off for weeks, knowing exactly how they'd react. But with the promotion now official, I couldn't delay any longer. Family meeting, I called out after dinner, my heart pounding as they gathered in the living room. Mom was scrolling through her phone, Dad was half listening while reviewing his golf schedule, Natasha was texting, and Randy was the only one actually looking at me. I got promoted today, I started, to senior manager. That's nice, dear, Mom said, not looking up from her phone. And I'm moving out next month. The phone's lowered. 4 pairs of eyes locked onto me. Moving out? Mom's voice cracked. But why would you want to do that? Because I'm 29, Mom. I need my own space. Space? Dad scoffed. You have plenty of space here. This is about money, isn't it? We can discuss reducing your rent. It's not about money, Dad. I just need to live my own life. Randy leaned forward. Come on, sis. You know we need you here. Who's going to help Mom with everything? Maybe you could all learn to help yourselves? The words came out sharper than I intended. I can't believe how selfish you're being, Natasha chimed in. After everything this family's done for you, done for me, I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, I stood up. My mind's made up. I'm moving out next month. I retreated to my room, hands shaking as I opened my laptop. A notification popped up. Natasha had tagged me in a social media post. My stomach dropped as I read it. Some people forget where they came from. Some people think they're too good for family. Guess blood isn't always thicker than water. Disappointed family betrayal. Comments were already flowing in. Mom had shared it. Dad had commented. Even Randy, who I thought might understand, had added his own passive-aggressive response. My phone buzzed again. Kayla calling. But I couldn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the screen, reading comment after comment, each one twisting the knife deeper. They wanted to talk about betrayal, about disappointment. My cursor hovered over the comment box as memories of that night 6 years ago flooded back. The night I took the fall for Randy's mistake. The night that changed everything. The secret I'd kept all these years. Maybe it was time they learned what real betrayal felt like. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Kayla had called 6 times, but I couldn't talk to anyone right now. I was too busy scrolling through the comments on Natasha's post, each one more infuriating than the last. Can't believe she'd do this to her own family. Some people just don't appreciate what they have. What kind of daughter abandons her parents? The bedroom door creaked open. Randy stood there looking apologetic. Hey sis, can we talk? About what? Your comment about how I'm throwing away years of family loyalty? I turned my laptop screen toward him. Or maybe Mom's post about her ungrateful daughter? He sat on the edge of my bed. Look, you know how they are. They're just shocked. Shocked? I laughed bitterly. They're shocked that their personal assistant wants a life of her own? That's not fair. Not fair? I pulled up the family calendar on my phone. Last week alone, I drove Natasha to 3 different college interviews, fixed Dad's presentation, organized Mom's charity event, and did your laundry twice. Tell me, Randy, when was the last time you did anything for this family except take? His face reddened. You know I've changed. I'm not that person anymore. No, you're worse. At least that person was honest about who he was. My phone buzzed again. Kayla. This time I answered, putting it on speaker just to make Randy uncomfortable. Girl, what the hell is happening? Kayla's voice filled the room. Your family's going full nuclear on social media. They're showing their true colors. That's what's happening. I kept my eyes on Randy. Apparently, I'm selfish for wanting my own life. Laura, Randy started, but I cut him off. Remember that night 6 years ago, Randy? Remember what real selfishness looks like? He stood up so fast he knocked over my desk lamp. Don't, you promised. Kayla's voice crackled through the speaker. What night? What's he talking about? Nothing, Randy said quickly. Laura, can we talk about this privately? I ended the call with Kayla. Why? Worried about your perfect image? The reformed golden boy who can do no wrong? You're angry, I get it. But don't do something you'll regret. My laptop dinged with another notification. Mom had shared yet another post. A mother's heart breaks when her children choose selfishness over family. Praying for my daughter. Too late, I muttered, opening my own social media account. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Randy grabbed my wrist. Laura, please, I'm begging you. I yanked my hand away. Get out. Look, I'll talk to them. I'll make them take down the posts. Just don't do this. A knock at the door interrupted us. Natasha barged in, waving her phone. Mom's crying because of you. Are you happy now? Oh, I'm about to be, I said, turning back to my laptop. What's that supposed to mean? Natasha looked between Randy and me. What's going on? Randy's voice was desperate. Nothing. Laura's just upset. Upset? I stood up. You want to see upset? Wait until everyone knows what really happened that night. Wait until they know who really... Enough! Randy's shout made both Natasha and me jump. He rarely raised his voice anymore. Please, Laura, I'll do anything. Just don't. Natasha crossed her arms. Don't what? What are you two talking about? My phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. Whatever you're thinking of doing, sleep on it first. Trust me. I looked at Randy's pleading face, at Natasha's confusion, at the stream of notifications still popping up on my screen. The secret I'd kept for 6 years burned in my throat, begging to be released. Get out, I said again, quieter this time. Both of you. After they left, I opened my laptop again. My hands were shaking as I began to type. Funny how some people can reinvent themselves when others carry their secrets. Maybe it's time for some truth. Family secrets. I hit post before I could change my mind. Within minutes, the questions started rolling in. Old friends from high school, neighbors, even Dad's golf buddies. Everyone wanted to know what I meant. Randy called 3 times. I ignored him. Mom sent a series of increasingly panicked texts. I ignored those too. Natasha pounded on my door until Dad made her stop. Around midnight, Kayla texted again. Whatever happened 6 years ago, is revenge worth destroying your family over? I stared at her message for a long time. Was it worth it? They'd already shown they were willing to publicly shame me for wanting independence. Why shouldn't I return the favor? My phone lit up with another notification. Randy had posted a response to my cryptic message. Some secrets protect more than just one person. Please remember that, sis. Family first. I scoffed. Now he wanted to talk about family first? Opening my laptop again, I started typing the story I'd kept buried for 6 years. It was time everyone knew the truth about perfect, reformed Randy. The cursor blinked accusingly as I stared at the empty text box. 6 years of silence pressed against my chest, but the memory of that night remained crystal clear. My phone rang. Kayla again. This time I answered. Before you do anything crazy, she said, I'm coming over. It's midnight. Exactly. You're about to nuke your family at midnight. You need intervention. 20 minutes later, we sat on my bedroom floor, sharing a pint of ice cream like we used to in college. The house had gone quiet, but I could hear Randy pacing in his room next door. Tell me what happened 6 years ago, Kayla said, passing me the spoon. I took a deep breath. Remember that break-in at the community center? The one that made the local news? When someone stole all that equipment and crashed the van? Yeah, that was huge. It wasn't some random burglar. It was Randy. Kayla's spoon clattered to the floor. What? He was high that night. Decided it would be fun to borrow their van for a joyride. Ended up crashing it into a ditch. But you... Her eyes widened. Oh my God, you took the blame. I nodded. I found him stumbling home, covered in cuts and bruises. He was crying, saying he couldn't go to jail, couldn't ruin his future. I laughed bitterly. He had a scholarship interview the next week. So you just confessed to a crime you didn't commit? Mom and Dad convinced me, said it would look better if I did it. First offense, good student, active in community service. They promised Randy would get help, would turn his life around. A soft knock interrupted us. Laura? It was Randy. Please, can we talk? I looked at Kayla, who nodded. Let him in. Randy entered, looking as haunted as he had that night 6 years ago. I saw you had company, he said, nodding at Kayla. I can come back? She knows, I said. I just told her. He sank into my desk chair. Are you going to tell everyone else too? Give me one reason why I shouldn't. Because I'm not that person anymore. You know that. The rehab program, the volunteer work, my job helping at-risk youth. It's all real. Yeah, built on a lie, built on my sacrifice. A sacrifice I think about every single day. His voice cracked. Why do you think I started working with troubled kids? Why do you think I spend every weekend at that same community center trying to make up for what I did? Kayla spoke up. Wait, you volunteer at the place you robbed? Every Saturday for the past 5 years. I answered for him. The perfect redemption story. Everyone loves Randy, the reformed bad boy who found his calling helping kids. While you got labeled the problem child, Kayla said quietly. Randy stood up suddenly. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see how mom and dad still treat you differently? Why do you think I never moved out? I stayed to try to protect you, to take care of things so you wouldn't have to. I snorted. Really? Is that why I still do your laundry? I ask mom to ask you because it's the only way she'll leave you alone for an hour. Every time I try to do things myself, she sends you to help anyway. That made me pause. It was true. Mom never let me rest when Randy tried to handle things himself. Look, he continued, what I did was unforgivable. Not just the crime, but letting you take the fall. I was a coward. But these past 6 years, I've tried to become someone worthy of your sacrifice. By letting them shame me on social media, I'll make them take it all down. I'll tell them I'm moving out too, that they need to learn to stand on their own feet. Just, please don't destroy everything we've both worked for. Kayla touched my arm. He has a point. You took the blame so he could help people. If this comes out now, all those kids he works with... My laptop dinged. Another notification. Mom had posted again. Sometimes the hardest thing is watching your children make mistakes. Praying for guidance. Randy reached for my laptop. May I? I nodded. He typed quickly, then turned the screen so I could see his response. The biggest mistake is taking family for granted. Laura deserves better, taking down my previous comments and apologizing to my sister. Sorry, Laura. Within minutes, his phone started blowing up with messages from our parents. He ignored them all. I can't promise this makes everything okay, I said. I know. He headed for the door, then turned back. But I can promise I won't let them treat you like this anymore. You deserve your own life, Laura. You've earned it more than anyone. After he left, Kayla picked up her spoon again. So, what are you going to do? I closed my laptop, the half-written exposé still unsaved. I'm going to bed. And tomorrow, I'm going apartment hunting. And the secret? I stared at the wall separating my room from Randy's, hearing him argue with our parents down the hall. Some secrets protect more than just one person, I quoted his post. Maybe it's time to protect myself instead. The real estate agent's heels clicked against the hardwood floors of what could be my new apartment. As you can see, the natural light is amazing, she said, gesturing to the floor-to-ceiling windows. I was already imagining my furniture in here when my phone buzzed. Natasha had tagged me in another post. Some family secrets should stay buried. Just saying. Family drama. Is everything okay? The agent asked, noticing my expression. Fine. I forced a smile. The apartment is perfect. When can I sign? An hour later, I sat in my car, staring at the signed lease agreement. Freedom was officially 30 days away. My phone had been buzzing nonstop, mostly messages from Mom about how I was breaking her heart, but one caught my eye. A comment from Tommy, Randy's old best friend from high school. Interesting post about family secrets, Laura. Remember that night 6 years ago? Maybe we should talk. My hands started shaking. Tommy had been there that night. He'd been in the van with Randy. Before I could respond, another message popped up. This one from Kayla. Emergency wine needed. Coming over after work. I drove home to find the house unusually quiet. A note on the fridge read, Emergency board meeting at the country club. Leftovers in the fridge. Mom. Randy was sitting at the kitchen table staring at his phone. Tommy's been messaging me, he said without looking up. Me too. He's threatening to tell people what really happened. I grabbed a wine glass from the cabinet. Maybe we should let him. Laura, I'm tired, Randy. Tired of carrying this. Tired of being the family disappointment because I took the fall for you. I know. He finally looked up. But Tommy doesn't know the whole story. He doesn't know about the kids in the van. The glass nearly slipped from my hand. We never talked about that part, how the van had been prepped for a field trip the next day, how close Randy had come to destroying not just his life, but the lives of innocent children. The doorbell rang, Kayla holding 2 bottles of wine. She read the tension in the room immediately. What did I miss? Tommy's surfaced, I said, grabbing another glass. The guy who was with Randy that night? Randy stood up. I should go. I have a meeting with my kids' group tomorrow anyway. Running away again? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He turned, face flushed. No, I'm going to call Tommy, try to reason with him. After he left, Kayla and I settled on the couch with our wine. Your sister's post about buried secrets was interesting timing, she said. Natasha doesn't know anything. She's just trying to stir drama. My phone buzzed again. Tommy. Remember how scared those kids looked the next day at the community center? Bet their parents would love to know how close their children came to disaster. He's bluffing, Kayla said, reading over my shoulder. He was just as guilty. But he has nothing to lose. His life is already a mess. The front door opened, Natasha, home early from her study group. She froze when she saw us. Oh, you're here. I live here for now. She hovered uncertainly. About my post. Save it. No, listen. I heard Randy talking to Tommy on the phone. Something about a van and kids. What really happened 6 years ago, Laura? I took a long sip of wine. Ask your brother. I'm asking you. She sat down across from us. Everyone thinks you crashed that van, but it was Randy, wasn't it? That's the secret? Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a new notification. Tommy had posted some interesting stories about that community center break-in from 6 years ago. Wonder if those kids' parents know how close their children came to riding in a van with cut brake lines? What is he talking about? Natasha grabbed her own phone. What kids? My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type a response. Tommy, call me. Now. Cut brake lines? Kayla whispered. You never mentioned that. Because it wasn't true, I said. The van crashed because Randy was high. Tommy's making things up. My phone rang. Randy. Are you seeing this? His voice was panicked. He's saying I cut the brake lines on purpose. Laura, you have to help me. No one will believe me if I deny it. I looked at Natasha, who was scrolling through the growing comments on Tommy's post. At Kayla, who seemed unsure whether to believe Tommy's version or mine. Laura? Randy's voice cracked. Please, everything I've built, all those kids I help now, it'll all be destroyed. The irony wasn't lost on me. Once again, Randy was begging for my help, asking me to protect him from his past. But this time, the stakes were even higher. Tommy posted again. Lots of questions coming in. Maybe it's time for the full story. One should truth coming. I had a choice to make. Let Tommy destroy Randy with lies, or finally tell the truth myself. Everyone in the living room, now. I hung up on Randy and texted Mom and Dad the same message. This had to end tonight. Within 15 minutes, they all filed in. Mom and Dad still in their country club attire, Randy looking pale, Natasha clutching her phone. Kayla started to leave, but I grabbed her arm. Stay. I need a witness who isn't family. Laura? Mom started. What is this about? We were in the middle of... Tommy's threatening to tell everyone Randy cut the brake lines on that van, I interrupted. He's lying, but he's also ready to tell everyone who really crashed it. Dad stood up so fast his golf cap fell off. We agreed never to discuss this. No, you ordered me never to discuss it. But now Tommy's spinning his own version, and it's worse than the truth. Randy's phone kept buzzing. He showed me the screen. Dozens of messages from kids he counseled, asking if the rumors were true. Tell them, Randy, I said. Tell them what really happened that night. He looked at our parents, then back at me. I was high. Tommy and I took the van for a joyride. I crashed it because I was too wasted to drive straight. And, I pressed. And Laura took the blame because I had a scholarship interview. Because I promised to get clean. His voice cracked. Because everyone thought she was the troublemaker anyway. Mom sank into her chair. We did what was best for the family. Best for Randy, I corrected, while I got labeled the black sheep, the problem child, the one who needed supervision and couldn't be trusted to live alone. But you were strong enough to handle it, Dad said. Randy wasn't. That's not an excuse, Natasha suddenly burst out. Do you know how messed up that is? You sacrificed one child to save another? Mom turned on her. You don't understand. Randy had potential. And Laura didn't, Kayla cut in. She just made senior manager at 29. What could she have achieved without a criminal record hanging over her? My phone buzzed again. Tommy, ready to tell everyone the truth about their precious youth counselor? I showed the message to Randy. Your call. We either tell the real story or we let Tommy tell his version. Randy stood up, hands shaking as he opened his social media app. I'll do it. Son, think about this, Dad warned. I have. Randy started typing. 6 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I was high, I stole a van, I crashed it. My sister Laura took the blame to protect me. She carried that burden while I got clean and built a new life. But I can't let her carry it anymore. Randy, stop. Mom tried to grab his phone. No, Mom. Laura's right. The truth needs to come out. He hit post. The response was immediate. Notifications flooded in. Some expressing shock, others support, many anger. The community center board will see this, Dad said. Your job is working with at-risk youth, Randy finished, teaching them that actions have consequences, that the truth matters. What kind of counselor would I be if I kept hiding behind my sister's sacrifice? My phone lit up with a call from Tommy. I answered on speaker. Saw Randy's post, he said. Brave move, but he left out the part about... There is no other part, I cut in. The brake lines weren't cut. You know that. You were there. Silence on the line. Then, fine. But people still deserve to know what really happened. They do now. And Tommy? If you try to spread lies about brake lines or endangered kids, I have the original police report. Want to explain to everyone why you fled the scene and left Randy to crash alone? He hung up. Laura, Mom said softly, we really did think we were doing what was best. I know, but your best wasn't good enough. I pulled out my lease agreement. I'm moving out next month, and this time, no one's going to stop me. I'm moving out too, Randy said. It's time we all grew up. Natasha stood up. If everyone's making announcements, I'm transferring to the state university. It's cheaper and I can pay for it myself. No more depending on Mom and Dad's money or Laura's help. Mom started to cry. Dad just looked lost. Your father and I, we don't know how to do this without you both here. Then it's time you learned, I said, but gently this time. We can't be your crutches forever. As everyone filed out, Kayla squeezed my hand. You okay? I looked at my phone, at Randy's post with its hundreds of responses, at the truth finally set free. Yeah, for the first time in 6 years, I really am. Randy lingered in the doorway. Thank you. Not just for tonight, but for everything. Don't thank me, I said. Just live a life worth the sacrifice. He nodded, understanding at last the weight of both our burdens. His to become someone better, mine to finally let go. The community center parking lot felt smaller than I remembered. Randy's car was already there, parked next to the spot where the van had crashed 6 years ago. He stood by the entrance, surrounded by a small group of teenagers, his counseling group. Laura, one of the kids called out. Are you the sister from the post? Marcus, Randy warned, but I waved him off. Yes, that's me. The kids exchanged looks. A girl with bright blue hair stepped forward. That was brave what you did, taking the blame to protect your brother. No, I said firmly. It wasn't brave. It was enabling. Sometimes protecting people means letting them face consequences. Randy cleared his throat. That's actually why I asked Laura to come today. We're talking about accountability. I followed them inside, where more teens sat in a circle of chairs. The room smelled of coffee and teenage anxiety. On the wall hung photos of Randy with various groups, camping trips, basketball games, award ceremonies. Most of you have seen my post, Randy started, about what really happened that night. A boy in the back raised his hand. Is it true you were high? Yes. I was addicted to several substances back then. I made terrible choices. But you got better, Blue Hair said. You help us now. I got better because people held me accountable, eventually. He looked at me. Laura, would you mind sharing your perspective? Before I could answer, the door opened. A man in his 60s entered, Mr. Peterson, the center's director. The same man who'd accepted my false confession 6 years ago. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, but his expression was stern. "Randy, could I speak with you and your sister privately?" The teens whispered among themselves as we followed Mr. Peterson to his office. Photos of community events lined the walls, including one of me doing community service here after taking the blame for Randy. "I saw your post," he said, closing the door. I always suspected there was more to that story. Randy straightened his shoulders. "Sir, I understand if you need to terminate my position." "Terminate you?" Mr. Peterson laughed. "Randy, do you know why I hired you 3 years ago?" We both shook our heads. "Because I saw how you kept coming back here, volunteering, working with the kids. I knew something was driving you. Now I know what." He turned to me. "And you, Laura, you carried that burden all these years." "Not very well," I admitted. "I almost exposed him out of spite last week, but you didn't. Instead, you let him tell the truth himself." He pulled out a folder. "The center's board met this morning. They want to expand our youth counseling program. Randy, they'd like you to head it up." Randy blinked. "Even after, especially after, your story, both your stories, that's exactly what these kids need to hear. About mistakes, consequences, redemption, and the price of enabling versus true support." A knock at the door interrupted us. Blue hair poked her head in. "Sorry, but there's someone here asking for Laura." In the hallway stood Tommy, looking older and more worn than I remembered. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Can we talk?" Randy started to follow us outside, but I shook my head. This conversation was 6 years overdue. Tommy waited until we were alone in the parking lot. "I was jealous," he said finally, "of Randy, getting clean, helping kids, becoming someone better. While I just stayed stuck." He nodded. "When I saw your post about family secrets, I thought, I don't know, that exposing him would make me feel better somehow. By making up lies about brake lines? I'm sorry, I was angry. Not just at Randy, but at myself. I was in that van too, but I ran away. Left him to crash alone. Left you to take the blame." A group of kids walked past us, heading into the center. One waved at me. Marcus, from Randy's group. "It's not too late," I said, "to become someone better." Tommy scoffed. "Easy for you to say. You're the hero of this story." "No, I'm not. I enabled bad behavior by covering it up. Real heroes face the truth no matter how hard it is." I pulled out my phone, showed him the center's website. They're always looking for volunteers. You think they'd let someone like me? They let Randy do it. Talk to Mr. Peterson. Tell him the whole truth. Start there. As Tommy walked toward the entrance, Randy came out. "Everything okay?" "Getting there." I looked at the spot where the van had crashed. You know what's weird? I've been so angry about taking the blame, I never let myself feel proud of who you became because of it. "Laura." "No, let me finish. What you did was wrong. What I did was wrong too, in a different way. But what you're doing now? That's right, and maybe that's what matters most." He hugged me, something we hadn't done in years. Over his shoulder, I could see Tommy talking to Mr. Peterson through the window, gesturing animatedly. "Ready to head home?" Randy asked. I smiled. "No, ready to start packing for my new apartment." For the first time, saying those words felt like a beginning rather than an escape. Moving boxes surrounded me like cardboard sentinels as I sorted through years of accumulated memories. Kayla sat cross-legged on my bed, helping me decide what to keep and what to donate. "Oh my God," she held up a photo. "Your goth phase." "Burn it," I laughed, but stopped when I saw the date on the back, 2 months after the van incident. My dark makeup and clothes hadn't been a phase, they'd been armor. A knock at the door made us both look up. Mom stood there, holding a stack of fresh towels. "I thought you might want these for your new place." "Thanks," I said, surprised. It was the first time she'd acknowledged my move without crying or guilt-tripping. She lingered, looking at the photo in Kayla's hand. "I remember that year. I thought you were just rebelling. I never realized that I was drowning." She sat on the edge of my bed. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Randy's post went viral, about the choices we made, the pressure we put on you." "Mom, we don't have to." "Yes, we do." She picked up another photo, me at my college graduation, forcing a smile while Randy was in rehab. "We failed you, not just by asking you to take the blame, but by taking you for granted ever since, making you the responsible one, the reliable one. Kayla quietly slipped out, giving us privacy. Did you know, Mom continued, that your father and I had our first real fight about dishes yesterday? In 30 years of marriage, we'd never argued about chores because I always did them. She nodded, wiping away tears. Randy's moving out next week. Did he tell you? Yeah, found a place near the community center. And Natasha's serious about transferring schools. Everyone's leaving. Not leaving, Mom. Growing up. There's a difference. A commotion downstairs interrupted us. Raised voices, something falling. We rushed down to find Dad and Randy in the kitchen, surrounded by broken dishes. I told you I'd handle the dishes, Dad was saying. And I told you you're loading the dishwasher wrong, Randy shot back. They both turned when they saw us. Laura, they said simultaneously, then stopped embarrassed. Don't look at me, I held up my hands. Figure it out yourselves. But you always, Dad started. Not anymore. I turned to head back upstairs, then paused. You know what? Watch this. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. Say cheese. Laura, we're a mess, Mom protested. Exactly. I took the picture. Dad with soap suds on his golf shirt, Randy holding a broken plate, Mom still teary-eyed, all of us looking slightly chaotic. I posted it immediately. Family isn't about perfection. It's about growth, even when it's messy. Real family. Within minutes, the likes and comments started flowing, but these were different from the angry, judgmental responses to our earlier drama. These were real, honest, understanding. Looks like my house when I moved out. Parents learning to adult is the best karma. This is what healing looks like. Natasha came home to find us all still in the kitchen, now laughing as Dad and Randy competed to see who could load the dishwasher faster. What's happening? She asked. Growth, Mom answered, surprising us all. Messy, uncomfortable growth. My phone buzzed with a message from Tommy. Started volunteering at the center today. Mr. Peterson says I have potential. Thanks for the push. I showed it to Randy, who smiled. He helped with my teen group. Kids really responded to him. Because he's real, I said. No pretense, no perfect facade. Dad straightened up from the dishwasher. Speaking of real, Laura, your mother and I have been talking. We'd like to help with your moving expenses. I started to protest, but he held up a hand. Not to control you or keep you dependent, but because we should have supported your independence years ago. And, Mom added, we'd like to start family therapy, all of us, to learn how to be better, for each other and ourselves. I looked around the kitchen, at the broken dishes, the sudsy floor, the imperfect family trying to do better. For the first time, I saw us clearly, not as victims and villains, but as flawed people learning to change. Therapy sounds good, I said, but I'm still moving out next week. We know. Mom smiled through fresh tears. And we're proud of you. Randy picked up another plate, deliberately dropped it. Oops, guess we need more practice at this adulting thing. Really? Dad exclaimed. What? Laura's not here to clean it up anymore. We better learn. I snapped another picture of their bickering, this one just for me. A reminder that sometimes the biggest messes lead to the best transformations. Upstairs, my boxes waited to be filled, but now they felt less like an escape route and more like a bridge to independence, to growth, to a new kind of family dynamic, one where we could all be perfectly imperfect together. The last box landed with a thud in my new living room. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. That's the last one, Randy said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Unless you're hiding more shoes somewhere. Hey, I helped you move yesterday. No complaining. Kayla emerged from the kitchen, already opening a bottle of champagne. Less talking, more celebrating. The doorbell rang. Mom and Dad, carrying a houseplant and looking uncomfortable but determined. Behind them, Natasha held a wrapped package. We brought you something, Mom said, thrusting the plant forward. It's a peace lily. The florist said they're good for new beginnings. And this, Natasha handed me her gift. Open it now. Inside was a framed photo. The one from the kitchen last week with all of us surrounded by broken dishes and soap suds. She'd added a caption, perfectly imperfect. For your new wall, she said, so you remember you're not actually escaping us. Speaking of not escaping, Dad cleared his throat. We had our first therapy session this morning. And? I tried to keep the skepticism out of my voice. And your father cried? Mom said, earning a glare from Dad. In a good way. We talked about patterns, about enabling, about how we've treated you. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Tommy, looking nervous, but clean-cut in a button-down shirt. Sorry I'm late. Had my first official counseling session with the kids today. Randy beamed. How'd it go? Amazing. Terrifying. They asked about the van incident. I told them everything. My part in it, running away, trying to cause trouble last week. They actually respected the honesty. That's what real accountability looks like, I said, remembering our conversation in the parking lot. Kayla started passing around champagne glasses. To new beginnings? Wait, Mom said. She pulled out her phone. I want to post something first. We all froze. The last time my mother posted about family matters, it had sparked a war. She showed us the screen, learning that perfect families don't exist, but perfectly imperfect ones do. Proud of all my children today. Family growth, new chapter. Mom, I started. I know, no more social media drama, but I wanted people to see the whole story, the real ending. It's not an ending, Randy said. It's just different, better. Dad picked up a box labeled kitchen. Should we help you unpack? Actually, I smiled, I think I want to do it myself. Figure out where everything goes, make it mine. Good, Mom said firmly, though her eyes were wet. That's good. We stood there awkwardly until Kayla raised her glass. To Laura's new place. And to Randy's promotion, I added. And to Tommy's fresh start, Randy chimed in. And to parents learning to load dishwashers. Natasha smirked. After they left, I sat on my new couch, surrounded by boxes and possibility. My phone buzzed with a message from Blue Hair, the girl from Randy's group. Thanks for showing us that telling the truth isn't the end of the world. I looked at the kitchen photo on my wall, at the peace lily by the window, at the keys to my very own apartment. Opening my phone, I made one final post. 6 years ago, I made a choice to protect someone else's truth. Today, I'm choosing to live my own. Not running away, not cutting ties, just growing. Sometimes the hardest part of loving your family is learning to love yourself first. My truth. New chapter. The responses came quickly. This whole story has helped me talk to my own family. From drama to growth. We love to see it. Your brother's program helped my kid. Sometimes bad choices lead to beautiful things. A knock at my door. Kayla had forgotten her jacket. She looked around at my boxes. Need help unpacking? No, I said, surprising myself. I think I want to take my time, do it my way. Look at you setting boundaries. She hugged me. I'm proud of you, you know that? After she left, I opened the box marked Memories. Inside was the old photo of my goth phase, the one Mom had seen earlier. I placed it next to the kitchen disaster photo. My phone buzzed one last time. A group text from Mom. Family dinner this Sunday? We promised to cook ourselves. It might be terrible, but it'll be our terrible. I smiled and replied, wouldn't miss it, but I'm not doing the dishes. Randy, Dad's got dishes covered. He's been watching YouTube tutorials. Natasha, this should be good. Dad, I resent these implications. Mom, no you don't, dear. See you Sunday, Laura? Looking around my new apartment, at the space that was entirely mine, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. See you Sunday, I typed. I'll bring dessert. Because sometimes moving forward means knowing exactly when to look back.